Chapter 701. You. Lord Vast Expanse glared at the monkey, then looked at Li Yunxin. What is he? The monkey lowered his head slightly, as if he was very dissatisfied with this sentence. This made his expression even more terrifying and resentful. Dragon King took a step back subconsciously, then realized he had been frightened by a monkey demon. Thing? Li Yunxin laughed. If Grand Supreme experts are also things, what are you? Grand Supreme? The 6 Dragon Kings were stunned. Lord Vast Expanse looked to his left and right. There was nothing but clouds. Then he realized that Li Yunxin was still talking about this monkey. Just a monkey demon, just. Dragon King frowned. Grand Supreme, do you know what Grand Supreme is? But after saying this, he couldn't think of anything else to say. His mind was a mess and thousands of voices exploded at the same time. He looked at the monkey demon again. His aura was indeed shocking, but he couldn't feel the demonic power in his body. Existences with extremely high cultivation could indeed restrain their spiritual and demonic aura, so that none of it was leaked. But he looked at Li Yunxin. This Li Yunxin was no longer seriously injured, and Lord Vast Expanse didn't know how he did it. But he had only returned to the peak of Shi mystical realm. In front of the 6 of them he was nothing. A thought slowly grew in his mind, a thought that grew stronger because of the desire to live. This time, could it be Li Yunxin's scheme again? He was used to schemes. He used some unknown method to create such a huge commotion, and then used his unknown supernatural power in the 50-kilometer array to borrow the momentum to destroy the demon army. Shi mystical realm could do it. It could do it, right? Then he used the monkey demon's disguise to scare him away. Could it? Could it be like this? If so, they could still live. But Li Yunxin sneered. Monkey demon? This is inner monkey Wukong, the great sage, heaven's equal. Since he's a great sage, he's naturally a grand supreme expert. Do you know? Demon, you're so long-winded. Just as Li Yunxin was halfway through his sentence and his tone became increasingly high-spirited, the monkey suddenly spoke. With a gloomy face, the forefinger of the hand that held the golden cudgel struck rapidly against the surface of the cudgel. He seemed very impatient. Are you going to fight or not? Li Yunxin coughed. Great sage, this is your first battle in this world. You have to have a good reason. Monkey turned his head slowly and glared at Li Yunxin. If you continue to be so long-winded, I'll kill you too. Li Yunxin sighed. Great sage, didn't I tell you many times just now? In your body, there are my 103 bones and 103 divine weapons that I have refined into my body. In my body, there are also 103 bones, and also the soul essence of 103 divine weapons. Now that our lives are linked, you are in me and I am in you, I am your core. If you die, I'll be seriously injured at most. But if I die, your core in this world will be gone and you won't be able to live. You've already said something like killing me 4 times since we met. It's very hurtful. We'll be together for a long time in the future. Monkey suddenly turned his head and covered his ears, shouting, long-winded, 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 long-winded. He jumped up as he shouted, staring at the 6 Dragon King. These demons can be fought, right? Are you going to fight or not? These demons dared to destroy the spirit stone that I'm residing in. Li Yunxin spread his hands and sighed helplessly. Fine, but he was interrupted by Lord Haohan again. Li Yunxin, you're wasting your time again, aren't you? He glared at him, and his eyes slowly lit up with eagerness and expectation. He pointed at the monkey. He wants to fight me, but you don't allow it. You're even acting like this. It's your trick again, isn't it? I won't give you another chance this time. Li Yunxin was stunned. Then he sighed. Fine. I've been bullied for so many days and I wanted to vent my anger by saying something. But you're all more impatient than the last. Fine, I'm being long-winded. It's your fault that you're so scared that you even have such thoughts. In order to survive, you still have to believe it. Then his expression turned cold. However, Lord Boundless. But Lord Haohan, the great sage's fight or not, isn't what you're talking about. Fighting with fists and kicks is called fighting. When he's talking about beating, he's talking about beating you to death with a stick. Sigh. Great sage, let's fight. As soon as these words came out, an incomparably violent demon power instantly swept across the surface of the ocean. The sea under the stone mountain was already boiling, as if an unimaginable amount of magma was about to explode in the next moment. But now, it was instantly pressed into an incomparably smooth mirror, and even the light at the bottom of the sea was suddenly extinguished. Not even a single wave could stir. Far away, the demon kings and their demon soldiers were retreating. But they retreated too late. Those who were below the true state and had low cultivation levels. Once they were hit by this demon power, they would bleed from their 7 orifices and die immediately. Once the shocking demon power in their bodies erupted, the faces of the 6 dragon kings immediately turned ashen, and they retreated immediately. At this moment of life and death, the 6 experts who had surpassed the profound state of life retreated tens of miles away, and with tacit understanding they split up and ran away. But the great sage didn't even bother to chase after them. With a kick, he raised the stick that was propped on the ground, stood on the spot, and waved with one hand. With a loud bang, the great ocean dragon king, who was already 25 miles away, exploded into a ball of blood and flesh. With another wave, the Sichuan dragon king, who was 60 miles away, died. With another twist of the golden stick, the North Sea dragon king and the Buhai dragon king died. At this moment, the vast dragon king and the dragon king of Chu Liao finally escaped from Li Yunxin's 50-mile formation. The monkey king took a step forward and waved his stick again. At the intersection of the sea and the sky, 2 balls of golden light exploded like the previous 4 balls. Hence, the ocean became silent again. The monkey king stared into the distance for a while. There are still some demons further away. Should we fight? Li Yunxin realized that he was talking about the demon kings who were originally watching the battle and were now fleeing in all directions. But after a while he said, "Forget it. We still have some use for them." He was shocked by the power displayed by the great sage, even though he had already mentally prepared himself, even though the Monkey King was known for his extremely powerful martial arts in his previous world. But it was indeed at this moment, when the Monkey King killed the physical body of a profound state of life with one strike, that he truly experienced the power of the Taishang. No wonder the Shinryu back then was able to sweep through the world with an unstoppable force. Then he thought about the 2 false sages on Cloud Mountain. He originally thought that their strength could be considered half-step Taishang. But now it was simply laughable. The Monkey King snorted, looking uninterested. "Forget it. I can't fight either. They're too weak, too weak. Boring, boring." After saying that, he stared at Li Yunxin. "What else do you have to say? Hurry up and say it. If there's nothing else, I'll go play." "For the time being, there's nothing else," Li Yunxin said with a smile. "But where do you want to go, great sage?" I'm free to roam the world." The Monkey King curled his lips. "I'm going." After saying that, an auspicious cloud suddenly appeared under his feet, and his figure flashed and he left. However, Li Yunxin didn't say anything, nor did he do anything. He only smiled and watched with his hands behind his back. He saw, the Monkey King was still in his original spot. His figure flickered and became blurry, but he couldn't go anywhere. In the next moment, the Monkey King stopped and flew into a rage. He opened his mouth wide, revealing 2 long canine teeth, and shouted, "Demon! What tricks are you playing? That's why I said that you have to listen to me patiently in the future." Li Yunxin smiled and sighed. "I've said it since the beginning. Our lives are related. You're in me and I'm in you. I will be the formation eye to summon you, and I will also be your core. Of course I am one with you, though we seem to be 2 at present. But it's more like 2 personalities who know each other." As he spoke, he slowly took 2 steps with his hands behind his back. He looked at the furious Monkey King and said, "How the formation operates naturally depends on how the formation eye of the main formation is controlled, which is also my intention. Sai, great sage, you can't go anywhere now. If I have to say where I want to see it, you tell me. I'll take you there after I'm done with my business. We'll have company and I'll tell you about the country. It won't be a lonely journey. Okay." The Monkey King stared at him with an ominous glint in its fiery eyes. In the next moment he abruptly raised his golden staff. "This is the end of you, demon." His golden rod had just killed 6 Dragon King cultivators in the realm of life and mystery. However, Li Yunxin didn't even blink when facing the golden rod. "You won't." His words were like a spell. The Monkey King held the golden rod so tightly that it made cracking sounds, but it didn't hit him. The Monkey King gritted his teeth, but he couldn't say a word. It was as if some invisible power had sealed him firmly. But what kind of power could seal a Grand Supreme? This damn Li Yunxin was going to say a lot of things just now, but he was interrupted. Now that he finally had a chance to speak, he immediately began to talk. "Great sage, you definitely haven't experienced that kind of experience, but almost every mortal has. When you're extremely sleepy, you're woken up. You shout in your heart that it's time to get up or it'll be too late. Get up, get up, get up. But as you shout, you're sleepy. You just want to continue sleeping and your body doesn't seem to listen to you. People usually think that the quilt and the bed cast a sorcery, trapping you and making you unable to get up. But in fact it's not like that. It's just that your consciousness is struggling. After struggling for a while, it's very likely that you'll fall asleep again while shouting to get up. When you wake up, it's really too late. Then you'll shout to die again. Our current situation is similar to that. But it's an upgraded version. You shout in your heart that you want to kill this demon with one strike. But while you think about it, you can't do it for some reason. It's not because you're hesitant or afraid. It's just that you can't do it. Isn't it amazing? This is because I'm in you and you're in me. Subconsciously, people don't want to hurt themselves. I just added something to the array to infinitely strengthen this kind of consciousness. After all, it's my profession. Speaking of this, Li Yunxin stopped laughing and became serious. In fact, great sage, if you spend more time with me, you'll find that I'm not only humorous but also interesting. I can also take you everywhere to stir up trouble and kill people. It's very interesting. Chapter 702. However, the Monkey King still didn't say anything. He just put down the stick and stared at him as if he wanted to kill him. But no matter how he moved his mouth, it seemed like it was sealed. Li Yunxin sighed. I know you're uninhibited and love freedom. Who doesn't? That's why I didn't give you a band-tightening spell. That's very kind of you. Say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. Don't hold it in. I know what's on your mind only if you say it. Let's talk more in the future. After all, we're guests in a foreign land. You, shut up. The monkey finally said something. But it was so loud that Li Yunxin couldn't breathe and took several steps back. Don't even think about it, demon. Don't even think about it. The Monkey King was so angry that he kept spinning on the spot, knocking the ground with his golden stick. But the ground was also a part of the spirit stone that he once resided in, so he couldn't bear to break it. After a while, he suddenly looked up at Li Yunxin and narrowed his eyes. Good, you demon. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. He looked around again and finally fixed his eyes on Li Yunxin. Don't even think about asking me to do anything. After shouting this, his body suddenly turned into a golden light and entered Li Yunxin's ears. He heard a buzzing sound in his ears. I'll watch someone kill you. He didn't say anything else. Li Yunxin picked his ears. Of course he couldn't take anything out. He smiled, put down his hands, and let out a long breath. A great sage with a temper was a good great sage. He wasn't afraid of him having a temper, but he was afraid that he was a soulless empty shell. That meant that his original idea was wrong and he had failed. But now, it seemed that he had succeeded. He perfectly repeated what the art Saint Qinzhao had done and maybe even better. In this world he created the great sage heaven's equal, Sun Wukong. Moreover, when he was talking to the great sage, he realized that there seemed to be some vague memories of his original world in the great sage's mind. This was the great sage heaven's equal, the great sage who had accompanied him through his ignorant and dim childhood. Because of this, he was glad that he didn't come up with anything else. In fact, there were even stronger candidates. For example, the gods of certain religions in his original world. The number of worshippers of these deities could be in the billions, and their faith was even greater than that of Shinryu and the great sage. But he didn't do so because the art saint didn't do it. Li Yunxin only needed to think for a moment to guess what the art saint was thinking. At the same time, it was also his own. Uncontrollable. If the created object succeeded, it would have its own consciousness and consciousness. But if the gods in his original world really existed in his original world, how could the thoughts of ordinary people be able to guess? It was just like how ants could not understand the thoughts of humans. Furthermore, the god with the strongest willpower in that world was said to have wiped out all the humans in the world until only 2 were left. He even prophesied that one day all of them would be destroyed. Once he was brought into this world, he would see that there were demons and ghosts everywhere, and there wasn't even a cycle of retribution. He would probably start to purify them immediately. How could he be a helper then? On the other hand, this great sage was a sentimental person with a pure heart. Furthermore, he was a demon. As for principles, there are. But he wasn't stubborn. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been recruited by the heavenly court. When he was angry, he was fierce. But his temper came and went quickly and he was easy to coax. Coaxing people, he was the best. After going through these thoughts in his mind, Li Yunxin raised his voice and said, Little you, come out. After about 3 breaths of time, Li Xinyu appeared. Qin Fengzi was carried in her hands and he had already woken up, and he looked like he had lost his soul. The female demon carefully landed on the stone pillar and threw Qin Fengzi aside. She looked around and then lowered her voice. That thing. Where did it go? Her face was full of anxiety and unease. Ever since she fused with the dragon soul and reached the peak of the profound realm, she rarely saw this kind of expression. But at least she could still speak. Qin Fengzi didn't move after being thrown to the ground, and stared at Li Yunxin in shock. These two people had followed Li Yunxin's instructions and hid. They also saw the 6 Dragon Kings' deaths from afar. Experts who had surpassed the profound realm were killed by the existence summoned by Li Yunxin with a stick. This kind of shock was not something ordinary people could understand. The two people were shocked differently. Red Lady was shocked by the great sage's realm. And Qin Fengzi was shocked by Li Yunxin's methods. He was also good at formations. When he was in the lifeless immortal sect he was proud of this, but now that he saw the power of Li Yunxin's formation, what else was there to say? How could it be a formation made by a human? Li Yunxin smiled. Don't call him that thing, he will get angry. His real name is Sun Wukong, you can just call him Great Sage. Red Lady was in a daze for a while. Actually, she wanted to ask about the origin of this Great Sage, and how he was created. She also wanted to ask what Li Yunxin meant by that world. But before that, Li Yunxin had told her enough. She hesitated for a while and finally gave up the idea. Then she carefully looked at the man in front of her. But why are you still? Profound realm? Later she knew what Li Yunxin had done under the Cloud Mountain. She also knew that he had created the 9th young master who was at the peak of the true state, and Lu Gongzan who had mastered the profound realm. The demonic power on the sea just now was many times stronger than under the Cloud Mountain. Why did he? Li Yunxin waved his hand. I don't mean anything. Being strong has its own advantages and being weak also has its own advantages. Besides, he pointed to his ear, I am now one with this great sage and I can be said to have copper muscles and iron bones. My body may be stronger than the previous dragon body. What am I now? I am neither dragon son nor a human. I can be considered as a new species. The dragons were also a new species. So I am not very sure what will happen if I enter the next realm at this time. Besides, even if I am at the peak of the profound realm, I still don't know how people like us can cultivate to the Grand Supreme. It is better to use it to fill the gap of this great sage. With him, I have nothing to be afraid of. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold snort sounded in his ear. Bah! Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Li Yunxin sighed and tapped the back of his head a few times, to make the sound in this ear not so loud. Otherwise it was not a good thing to be shocked and dizzy all the time. Red Lady nodded. After hesitating for a while, she looked at the distant sea, but just now, Li Chunfeng he ran away. He is not that stupid. Li Yunxin snorted. When he took Sheng Guanyu away, those Dragon King did not recognize him, and the demons in the formation must not be able to stop him. Just as well, let him see that I am no longer at his mercy now. I want to know what he is going to do. I will catch him one day and ask him face to face. When Li Yunxin said these words, his tone became cold. Red Lady said in a low voice, before the East Sea Dragon King died, he asked you to take your mother away, and he risked his life to stop you. He also said he wanted to repay his promise. Yunxin, your mother must still miss you. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then sighed. Forget it. Let's not think about it for now. We still have things to do. After saying this, he stood up and winked at Red Lady. Little you, let's play a game. A game? A game of catching fish. Li Yunxin said with a smile. That great sage destroyed their bodies. But the reason why I killed one with a stick is that I controlled the chi of heaven and earth to seal their divine soul and demonic power. Otherwise it would take more effort. Ah, good. Next time when you meet someone stronger, you will know whether I am bragging or not. Red Lady stared at his ear. He is talking here? Yes. Private space, constant temperature and humidity, it is a good place. The great sage must like it very much. Li Yunxin said with a smile. Go on. Their divine soul and demonic power have been sealed by me. So even if their bodies are gone, their souls are still there. Right now there are 6 of them on the sea, let's catch them separately. Let's see who can catch the most, okay? Red Lady blinked her eyes, seemed to be interested in this game. What happens after we catch them? Li Yunxin touched his hand, took out a small lantern and handed it to her. He took out a small lantern and handed it to her. Keep it here. It was for their ghost that I spent so much effort. Don't break them. Then, let's go. Li Yunxin said and left. As soon as his voice fell, he appeared several miles away. Red Lady looked at him for a while on the stone pillar and realized that his injuries had indeed recovered. He was originally injured in his soul, so, now, it was probably as he said, he was already a completely different existence from the dragon clan. So the smile on her face faded a little. But soon she smiled again, let out a sigh and left. Only Qin Fengzi was left on the stone pillar alone, as if he was in a dream. He didn't know where he should go, after hearing so many secrets. If he was caught, would Li Yunxin kill him? But he didn't even leave a restriction on him. Did he deliberately let him go? So he was in a daze. Qin Fengzi didn't say anything, but only talked about the mighty Dragon King. Li Yunxin really wasn't bragging. Before he asked the great sage to attack, he had indeed used a formation to seal the demonic power and divine soul of the 6 Dragon Kings. But the seal didn't stop people from using their demonic power. The 6 Dragon Kings didn't notice anything unusual. They were still like ordinary people and even felt that they were stronger. Because the demonic power in their bodies was protecting their divine soul, it made them feel that their foundation was stable. If they had the chance to fight with the great sage, they would probably feel that there was a part of their body that they couldn't use. But when they sensed the Monkey King's violent aura, they immediately ran away, not even having the chance to fight. Lord Haohan's physical body was smashed by the rod, but his divine soul was protected by the demonic power, so it wasn't too damaged. This first gave him a huge shock, and then he repeatedly exclaimed in his heart that he was lucky. He thought that it must be because of the powerful demonic power in the vast formation that filled his body, which allowed him to retain his consciousness and not become a muddle-headed ghost. Since that was the case, he didn't dare to stay any longer, and only dived into the water, heading towards the direction of the vast sea. He had operated the vast sea for many years, so he naturally had some leeway. He even hid some magic treasures and shelters in some secret places, just in case he needed them. He didn't expect that they would come in handy today. Chapter 703. Compared to the body, the soul was much lighter. Although he had lost all his demon power, it was also because of this convenience that his speed didn't slow down much. Moreover, he didn't need to eat or drink. Thus, after running wildly for 3 days, he finally entered the vast ocean. Along the way he met many demons. Originally, he was organized by the various demon kings on the sea to go sightseeing, to see the Dragon King on the sea encircle the Dragon King on land. On one hand, he wanted to see the strength of the Dragon King, and on the other hand he wanted to have something to talk about in the future. But who would have thought that this trip almost turned into a journey of death? That Luke who actually invited such a terrifying existence from who knows where. Now that the vast army was gone, even the various wild demon kings suffered heavy losses. How could they still have the mood to sightsee? They all hurried back to their nests to suppress the demons below, to prevent any changes from happening while they weren't there. It could be said that every family had their own problems. Lord Haohan secretly listened along the way. He was so angry that his soul almost left his body. Oh no, he already left his body. Those damn demons were like grass on the wall. They all talked about how strong Li Yunxin was, how calm, and how he wasn't afraid in the face of danger. They also talked about how the 150,000 soldiers surrounded him for many days, but didn't dare to make a move because they were afraid of his power. In the end, they finally mustered up the courage to try, but they ended up being defeated and killed. They all forgot about the scene of them watching the commotion earlier, and also forgot about the great sage that Li Yunxin invited, who killed all their soldiers when his demon power exploded. But anger was one thing. He knew what those cowards were planning. This Li Yunxin swept the Dragon King of the 9 seas. Wouldn't his next step be to rule the ocean? At least half of the ocean. Those cowards still had to make a living on the ocean. They weren't going to fall at the sight of the wind and curry favor with the future lord. Because of this, Lord Haohan didn't dare to show his face. Even when he occasionally ran into a few demons that bowed to him in order to enter the vast army, he didn't show his face to ask for help, but hid. He was afraid that those fellows would fight with him and capture him to offer to that Li Yunxin. He ran like this for another 2 days. Along the way, while listening to that hateful Li Yunxin's name spread all over the ocean, he would occasionally bump into little monsters that had just matured and kill them, extracting their demonic power so that he could become stronger. Those little demons weren't even at the emptiness realm. The demonic power it could provide was extremely weak. But the reason he was so hungry was because he was now heading towards his northern palace. Beigong was actually a homonym for Beigong. About 400 years ago, when he was patrolling in the sea, he found a giant seashell. When it matured, it grew to the size of a palace. The shell spirit's cultivation level was low, but its shell was extremely hard. He refined it into a palace while it was still alive. This refined palace was only the size of a millstone, but it was a completely different world inside. Thus, Lord Vast Expanse used the northern palace to hide his demon body. After all, the 9 dragon kings of the sea were all sealed by the Shinryu god. This title was different from the titles of the land dragon son. The dragon princes of the continent were given territories and titles. But this territory might not be able to be defended, for example, the 9th young master. But even if the territory was gone, the land dragon son was still the dragon son. But the dragon kings of the sea, such as the Lord of the East Sea, used to be a small demon general under the command of goddess Penglai. He was a creature of the sea that gained intelligence and became a human. When Shinryu sealed him, he sealed his original soul with the chi of the heavens and earth and the sea, becoming the Lord of the East Sea. Lord Vast Expanse was in the same situation. Therefore, although his Lord Vast Expanse's dragon body was gone, the demon body he had when he was a little demon was still well kept, in the Northern Palace. He originally thought that if one day he was in trouble, at least he would have a body to rely on. He didn't expect to use it now. He didn't know if he should be sad or happy. However, the Dragon King of the East Sea had always been competitive. After running like this for 5 days, the initial fear in his heart slowly faded. But his hatred burned even more fiercely. That Li Yunxin destroyed his army, destroyed his dragon body. Now that he was lucky enough to keep his soul, how could he just let it go? This hatred and desire for revenge reached its peak when he finally saw the Northern Palace. The Northern Palace was placed in an extremely deep strait in the middle of the vast sea. It was covered in mud that was several feet deep. Lord Vast Expanse forced the layer of mud away and saw the dark green shell of the Northern Palace below, and his heart finally calmed down a little. He used the demon power that he had accumulated along the way and finally opened the entrance to the Northern Palace, and escaped in. The space inside the palace was extremely wide and it was a circular hall. Inside the hall were countless jewels and even some divine weapons and armor. But the most important thing was the body in the 10,000-year ice coffin in the middle of the hall. He looked like a sturdy man. But his appearance was ugly with small eyes and a big mouth, and he looked somewhat like a fish. His skin was green and full of sarcomas. This was his body before he was conferred the title of Lord Vast Expanse, a Taowu. Although Lord Vast Expanse's body wasn't handsome, it could barely be called heroic. After 1,000 years, the vast Dragon King had long gotten used to his appearance. But now that he saw the ugly face in the ice coffin, he suddenly felt a wave of disgust. He held the coffin with his hand and was silent for a long time. After a full quarter of an hour, he slowly exhaled. His figure flashed. The Lord Vast Expanse in the coffin opened his eyes, and with a bang he punched the coffin lid with both fists and roared, "Li Yunxin! I swear I will take revenge." His roar was impassioned and filled with endless anger. His voice should have reverberated throughout the hall, echoing endlessly. But the sound was muffled in the coffin. Only his mouth could be seen opening and closing, and his voice was as soft as the buzzing of a mosquito. Because when he held the coffin inside, he thought of many things. For example, since his soul was sealed with a demon soul and the sea and sky, then in theory he was the embodiment of the sea and sky. As long as the sea and sky were still there, his demon power could slowly recover. Now he temporarily used this body. When he became as strong as before, he would escape from the Northern Palace and contact his old subordinates in the sea. There would always be some who didn't like Li Yunxin, to re-establish his own power. At that time, when Li Yunxin became the ruler of the sea, how could the lifeless immortal sect in the Shinryu not care about him? He could throw himself over. As long as he could take revenge, so what if he threw himself over? With these thoughts in his mind, he ran madly for 5 more days without any worries, and felt that he could succeed. Because of this, his emotions became even more agitated. He gritted his teeth and entered the body, becoming one with the body again. Only then did he realize that he had missed something. Baian's demon body was only at the transcendent level. The 10,000-year ice coffin that contained this demon body was a treasure that he had used all kinds of magical powers to seal. Now that he had almost lost all his demon power, how could he break it? He was trapped here by himself. Lord Haohan roared in anger. Unfortunately, he could only see his mouth. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. First there was a big change, then there was hope. But now he was unlucky again. Although he could temporarily be trapped here and wait for the demon power between the sea and sky to slowly gather in his body, there would be a day when he would be able to escape. But he didn't know how long it would take for him to return to the profound stage. Was it a year? Or 100 years? Or 1,000 years? Lord Haohan's anger and resentment made him want to explode. But what could he do? He could only roar a few more times in despair, barely venting his anger. After a while he finally calmed down. He thought, there might be a way to help him escape. But at this time, in an extremely secretive palace in a strait in the depths of this vast sea, he heard the sound of knocking on the door. The ice coffin was heavy. Originally, it was difficult to hear from the outside, and it was also difficult to hear from the inside. But at this time the knocking sound was so clear that Lord Howhan thought he was hallucinating. First there were 3 dang 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 sounds. After 2 breaths of time, there were 3 dang 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 sounds again. Then there was a voice, "Hello." The person who knocked on the door asked politely, "Is there anyone at home? Please open the door." The voice was gentle and clear, so it shouldn't be annoying. But when it fell into Lord Howhan's ears, his scalp went numb and he was scared out of his wits. Every pore on his body was covered in a cold sweat. It was Li Yunxin's voice. Lord Howhan's body froze in the ice coffin, not daring to move. Even he himself didn't know why he did this. It seemed like it could make the person outside go away. But the knocking sound was heard 3 more times. "Lord Howhan, don't hide inside, I know you're at home." Li Yunxin's voice sounded cheerful, as if he was in a good mood. "If you have the guts to surround me, why don't you open the door?" He began to knock again. Every time he knocked, the whole palace shook fiercely. While knocking he said, "Open the door, open the door." The pitiful vast Dragon King had just managed to catch his breath and was starting to have some lofty aspirations. But he accidentally trapped himself in the ice coffin, and then this Li Yunxin came to find him. The fire in his heart was extinguished as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. The palace was shaking violently, and the ice coffin was shaking along with it. The treasures in the palace were rolling all over the floor, almost burying his ice coffin. After a dozen breaths of time he finally shouted, "Li Yunxin! Li Yunxin! Why do you have to force me? I've already fallen to this state." His voice was still sealed inside the palace. But Li Yunxin, who was outside, seemed to hear it clearly. But Lord Howhan felt that the whole palace began to move up and down again, as if the Devil Star was holding the whole northern palace in his hand and throwing it back and forth. Lord Howhan is really lenient with yourself and strict with others. When you want to kill me you laugh, but when I want to kill you, you pretend to be pitiful. Li Yunxin through the palace for a while and his voice suddenly became cold. "Don't be so shameless, open the door. I have something to ask you." He couldn't escape no matter what. Lord Howhan stood up and shouted, "If you have something to ask, ask. I'll tell you everything. As long as you let me go this time, I'll tell you everything. Didn't we fight because of Shinryu and lifeless immortal sex provocation? It's not like we have to fight to the death." These words seemed to have an effect. Li Yunxin was quiet for a while. After a while he said, "That's fine, I'll ask you first. How did Shinryu seal you in the first place?" He agreed so straightforwardly that Lord Howhan was stunned. But now he was like a fish on the chopping block, and his only hope was in Li Yunxin's will. He hoped that he would really leave after asking clearly, so that he would have a chance to redeem himself in the future. After thinking for a while he said, back then, I was just a pawn, that Shinryu found me and said that I was talented and had great potential, so he taught me a set of techniques." Before he could finish, the whole palace shook again. But this time it wasn't just being thrown up and down, but something sharp was being chiseled. He hurriedly shouted, "Didn't we agree? You're not telling the truth? Looks like Lord Howhan won't shed a tear until he sees the coffin." Li Yunxin said coldly, "Chuliao Dragon King and Dang Dragon King didn't mention any techniques. Are they lying or are you lying? Why don't you confront them face to face?" "They said it? You caught them too?" Lord Howhan shouted, "Where are they? I chased them for 2 days and caught them." Li Yunxin said calmly, "I should have caught you on the 3rd day. But those 2 are too cunning and don't like to tell the truth, just like Lord Howhan. That's why I wasted an entire day to ask them. Then I scattered their souls." "Lord Howhan, if you also want to taste the feeling of having your soul scattered, feel free to spout nonsense. In the end, I'm just here to listen to your words and verify their words. Life and death are decided by a single thought, it's all up to you." Lord Howhan Dragon King was silent for a long time, then said, "Then, you'll really spare my life?" Li Yunxin said calmly, "I've even spared that Qin Fengzi's life, why wouldn't I spare yours? I've always been a man of my words, don't worry. Speak." After a while, Lord Howhan Dragon King said, "Fine, I'll speak. In the end you'll still have to fight against that Shinryu. No matter what I do. I'll be happy no matter who kills each other. Then I'll tell you, if you want to go to Dragon Island, you might not be able to meet that Shinryu. That Dragon Island isn't a normal place. Shinryu's thaumaturgy on Dragon Island isn't something you or I can imagine. At that time, she chose me and brought my soul to Dragon Island. What's the inside of Dragon Island like? Do you think it's really an island? Lord Haohan laughed. It's only the size of a palm, it might not even be as big as the palace where Lord Donghai discussed business. Shinryu lives alone inside the seal. When I went there, I first saw an empty room, but Shinryu had to use her thaumaturgy to go to another place to see her. After that, my soul was refined and I obtained the profound realm's thaumaturgy. At that time I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so I tried to break that seal. What was the result? That seal isn't something that a thaumaturgy can break. At this point he paused, as if he was waiting for Li Yunxin to ask what the empty room looked like. But after a while Li Yunxin asked, "Then what does the place where Shinryu lives look like?" Lord Haohan paused, a little surprised, because Li Yunxin's question had hit the nail on the head. Chapter 704. The place where Shinryu is, Lord Haohan said after a while. Did the two of them tell you? They did. He heard Li Yunxin say, I need you to confirm it again. Because what they said is a little unimaginable. Lord Haohan felt a little relieved. Since Li Yunxin could say the word unimaginable, it meant that he was telling the truth. The two fellows were indeed captured by him. What he was worried about was that his words sounded too unimaginable. What if that Li Yunxin thought that he was coaxing him and really fought his way in? He thought for a while, then said in a low voice, She didn't look like she was in any place in this world. When I was summoned to her shelter, I only saw a starry sky. It looked like a starry sky, but it looked like a distorted starry sky. As he said this, he seemed to have forgotten about the dangerous situation he was in because he remembered the unimaginable scene at that time. He thought for a while again. It also looked like a starry sky separated by colored glass. It was hazy and blurry. But there seemed to be an eye in the middle. I later thought that the eye was actually a crack. There was fire inside. Li Yunxin interrupted him and asked in a low voice, Is it the entrance to the netherworld? Lord Haohan was shocked. You know about the netherworld too? I know a lot of things. Let me ask you again, did Shinryu use any treasures or tools to seal you? Lord Haohan thought for a while. No. As expected. Li Yunxin muttered to himself outside, then fell silent for a while. Lord Haohan panicked because of his silence. He was afraid that after the silence he would suddenly say, since I'm done asking, it's time to end you. If what Li Yunxin said was true and he did ask the two fellows first and then came to ask for his proof, the possibility was very high. He didn't want to die, so he kept his mind working quickly while breaking out in a cold sweat. Finally, with a flash of inspiration, he grasped an idea. He immediately said, Li Yunxin, this northern palace of mine was refined by me with my profound realm cultivation. It's incomparably hard. If you want to break it open, you'll have to spend a lot of effort. But now that you're asking about the Shinryu, you must be plotting against Dragon Island as well. I advise you to go there as soon as possible. If you're late, you won't have another chance. These words seemed to have aroused the interest of the Devil Star outside. The Dragon King heard Li Yunxin ask, Oh? How do you explain this? Lord Vast Expanse was delighted. He thought to himself that he had indeed guessed his intentions. Lowering his voice, he spoke quickly and anxiously, Haven't you heard of this on the mainland? The whereabouts of the 4 celestial mountains in the sea are unpredictable. That was the truth. In Whitewater Town alone, several people claimed that they had seen the fairy mountain and pointed out the exact location. However, when people went to that location to search, they couldn't find anything. One person saying this might be a rumor, but many people saying this over the generations. Some people guessed that the fairy mountain might be floating on the surface of the sea. Maybe it was carried by a giant turtle. After a while, Li Yunxin said, I've heard of this theory. It's true. Lord Vast Expanse hurriedly said, but the whereabouts are uncertain are only the 3 mountains of Penglai, Yingzhou, and Fenghu. These 3 mountains are actually moving slowly in the sea. But Dragon Island, it doesn't even exist in this world. It must have been sealed by some kind of divine power, so that we can only enter through the entrance of the 3 mountains. Otherwise, why would the lifeless immortal sect control the 3 mountains first? Li Yunxin, you can take advantage of their unstable power to rush into the 3 islands and sneak into Dragon Island. But once the lifeless immortal sect bring the 3 mountains back to their lair in Ruoxue, even if you have great divine power, you'll only be slightly stronger than ordinary people there. But the lifeless immortal sect has been operating in Ruoxue for so long, can you win against them? So, if you want to go to Dragon Island, don't waste your time here. Be careful not to lose the big picture because of a small gain. Li Yunxin was silent for a while again. Lord Vast Expanse is saying that the 3 islands of Penglai Yingzhou and Fenghu are actually 3 doors, each door leads to a house where Shinryu resides. Exactly. Boundless Dragon King said, right now Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal Sect are one. If you want to dominate the ocean, you have to obtain these 3 doors and separate them. Otherwise it will be hard for you to succeed. So, why bother wasting your time here? Those who want to achieve great things don't bother about trifles, they should let go of past enmity. If you let me go today, I will take revenge in the future. What happened between us a few days ago was forced by Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal Sect. Maybe you will need me in the future. At least in my vast ocean. Li Yunxin suddenly laughed. Lord Vast Expanse, who told you that I want to dominate the ocean? Boundless Dragon King was stunned. What? I have no interest in dominating the ocean at all. But what you said just now is half wrong but also half right. Li Yunxin began to knock on the northern palace again. But this time it didn't seem like he wanted to break it, but more like he was knocking for fun. I don't want this 9 Cs. I just want to see Shinryu and clarify some things. As for what is right, he dragged out his voice, I do need your help. I still need your help. Everything can be discussed, everything can be discussed. Boundless Dragon King hurriedly said, as long as I can do it, of course you can do it. The knocking stopped and he heard Li Yunxin say, let me borrow your soul. Still the same, open the door. Boundless Lord was stunned. Then he yelled, you promised? I promised to spare your life. Li Yunxin said impatiently, it's to give you hope. You'll only cooperate with me if you have hope. Moreover, I'm borrowing your divine soul, not destroying it. I'm just putting you in the painting, you still have your consciousness. If one day you're lucky enough to escape, you might be able to redeem yourself. Open the door. Boundless Lord's eyes widened and he was speechless. This was a mixture of anger and fear. He felt his throat freeze. After being frozen for a while, he forced out a low growl, don't even think about it. Li Yunxin sighed outside the northern palace. Bubbles bubbled out of his mouth. I say, great sage, help me. He had already walked around the northern palace several times, knocking here and there. He had also tried using the few divine weapons in his hands to smash and pry. But Boundless Lord had obviously put in a lot of effort and he couldn't break it. This was reasonable. The battleships in his world required the main armor to be able to withstand the bombardment of the main cannon, not to mention that it was a great demon of the mysterious realm who built it for himself. After repeating this a few times, he heard the Monkey King snort and ignore him. Li Yunxin jumped onto the northern palace and sat down, patiently guiding him. Great sage, didn't you think that the previous 7 weren't strong enough? Now there's still one strong enough. It's the Shinryu King of the Sea. The Shinryu King, she's so annoying. These 7 were sent by her to kill us. As for herself, she always says that she's the number 1 in the world and that no one is stronger than her. She even suppressed a great hero and sealed him under the mountain for 1,000 years. Great sage, 1,000 years. What? It's because that great hero is also a demon. He occupied the mountain and became the king, living happily with a group of small demons. But this Shinryu King, she wants to rule the world and asked that great hero to raise horses. Great sage, are you listening? After a while, the monkey snorted coldly, raise horses? Why raise horses in the sea? Seahorses. Li Yunxin slapped his thigh. There are Pegasi in the sky, but aren't there also seahorses in the sea? They can be raised for those demons to ride on. The monkey fell silent. After a while he said, raise horses? Raise horses. Isn't that right, raise horses? It's said that there are many treasures in the Shinryu Dragon Palace. Not only are there treasures, there's also an entrance to the Sunluo Temple. The monkey exclaimed, there's a Sunluo Temple here? Yes. Sunluo Temple. Sunluo Temple. Why did you capture this demon? The map, great sage. Li Yunxin sighed, didn't great sage hear it clearly just now? I don't want to rule the ocean, it's just that that hateful Shinryu wants to harm me. I have to take revenge. I'll take this guy's demon soul and find the way to the Dragon Island. The Monkey King hesitated for a while, then said, Humph, that's fine. You overconfident demon, you should go see that Shinryu King, ask him to kill you. Li Yunxin curled his lips. He still said, with great sage here, how could I? But before he finished his sentence, a golden light suddenly shot out from his ear. He thought that the Monkey King had escaped, so he hurriedly dodged to make room. But what came out wasn't the monkey, but the golden rod in his hand. When the golden rod hit the shell palace, there was a loud rumble. But the moment it touched the shell, it retracted and went back into his ear. But the entire seabed began to shake. The mud was lifted up and the rocks on both sides of the strait fell. The golden rod created a hole in the indestructible shell palace. Golden light shot out from the inside, and even the spiritual energy inside gushed out. It began to grow bigger, and in the blink of an eye, it covered the entire canyon. Then it slowly opened up, like a big mussel opening its mouth. Now, everything inside could be seen clearly. The vast Dragon King was trapped in the ice coffin, unable to escape, and could only shout in despair. But his voice was blocked by the ice coffin, and it looked somewhat comical. The treasures in the palace were rolling all over the ground, and the dust and rocks slowly fell into the water. It was a scene of a dead end. Li Yunxin waved his hand to stop the falling rocks and jumped into the palace. He didn't look at the vast Dragon King first. He only collected the treasures that were rolling on the ground and kept them into his little finger. When the floor of the palace became smooth again, he strolled to the side of the ice coffin. He took out a painting scroll from his sleeve and unfolded it on the ice coffin. This was the painting he saw on the Taowu. At that time, the Lord of the East Sea's clone had just arrived, and he destroyed it and sealed it in this painting. He also sealed Xie Sheng and the mermaid in it. The painting was supposed to be about the East Sea, but the strokes were complicated and ever-changing. Apart from the sea and the sky, there were more flowing spiritual energy that looked like dense vines. But the people in this world might find it strange, but the people in his world might be able to understand it, because it was more like a weather map that could only be seen from a very high altitude. But the East Sea that he drew on the ship only occupied a small part of the painting scroll. Now the painting was not only about the East Sea, there were also the North Sea, the South Sea, the East Sea, the Chuliao Sea, the Daying Sea, and the Sichuan Sea, a total of 7 seas. There was a piece missing in the middle. It was the Dragon King of the Western Sea. The Dragon King of the Western Sea had been killed by Red Lady a long time ago. A bigger piece was missing in the southwest. That place was the vast ocean of today. Li Yunxin reached out and stroked the painting for a while, then looked at the boundless Lord. Don't blame me for wanting your divine soul. As the saying goes, an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Your jade is your divine soul. The Dragon King opened his mouth to say something urgently, but Li Yunxin was too lazy to listen. Shinryu was drawn. Do you know? Li Yunxin smiled. I have a Huangyu Jingtian map in my hand. From the looks of it, it was just an ordinary map. But I thought about it these days. I realized that it was probably the same as the one in my hand. After he said these words, the Dragon King was stunned. Obviously, the fact that Shinryu was drawn strongly challenged his ability to accept it. Li Yunxin pointed at the painting scroll. Shinryu sealed the sea and the sky and sealed the 9 of you. What do you think she wanted to do? Not just to let you manage the demons in the sea after her power weakened, but also to put all the eggs in different baskets. The sea points in the 9 seas formed a painting array. The one who drew the array was the Shinryu of Dragon Island. And the Shinryu of Dragon Island was both the Shinryu of 2,000 years ago and also not the one 2,000 years ago. She was a complete one. The painting array of the 9 seas and the painting array of the 36 countries of Midland in the Huangyu Jingtian map made her. As for the one of Dragon Island, she was the core. The 9 seas painting array became the core of Dragon Island. The core then absorbed the power of the 36 countries of Midland and became Taishan. But later something happened. The complete Shinryu died. So the external power absorbed by the core, the power of the 36 countries of Midland to draw the array, disappeared. So the Huangyu Jingtian map became an ordinary map without any spiritual energy. Li Yunxin paused and nodded. Yes, that should be the case. So only the core of Dragon Island was left. It didn't have much power. She relied on bluffing and pretending to be mysterious to survive for another 1,000 years. She must have known that she was in a bad situation. She was also afraid that someone would see through her secret. So she sealed the 9 Dragon Kings. Theoretically speaking, every divine soul was a part of her complete divine soul. As long as one of them is alive, she won't be completely destroyed. Otherwise, why do you think I spent so much effort and forced you to gather together before making a move? I guess she didn't expect me to get all the baskets. She told me to get rid of you, probably to retract her power. But she couldn't do it herself. It's a pity that she found me. She let a wolf into the house. Li Yunxin sighed and looked at Lord Ohana. Do you understand now? Not if you understand. I said the same thing to the other Dragon Kings. It's to let you know. The more you understand, the less effort I will have when I form the array later. Chapter 705. The Lord of the Vast Expanse widened his eyes. After a long time he said, "What?" Li Yunxin was a bit impatient. "I mean that Shinryu on Dragon Island is the embodiment of the spiritual power of the entire 9 seas. At the same time it's also a core. This core, together with the spiritual power of the Midland 36 countries' Great Formation, is the complete, super-powerful Taishang Shinryu from 2,000 years ago. The 9 of you are equivalent to her cutting herself into 9 pieces like an earthworm making a backup for herself. Idiot, do you understand?" The Vast Expanse Dragon King subconsciously nodded. But then he shook his head frantically. Li Yunxin smiled. "Oh, that's it then. In a moment, when I spread your soul in this painting, it's equivalent to copying the chi flow of the Vast Expanse see itself on the painting. The appearance of your soul will be the appearance of a part of Shinryu's soul, and also the appearance of the true spiritual power of the 9 seas. This is called reverse manipulation. When I do this later, I hope you can think of what I just said. With a clear mind and a clear consciousness, the painting will be much clearer, and I won't need to make too many adjustments." While saying that, he slid out a misty green iron chain from his sleeve. The Lord of the Vast Expanse realized what he was going to do. This Li Yunxin was going to do something extremely evil. The worst result of killing a demon was that both body and soul would be destroyed. But unless there was a deep hatred, most people wouldn't do it in a situation where they had no other choice. Just like how mortals in the secular world always felt that killing is inauspicious, demons also had similar thoughts. To put it simply, this was a kind of superstition. Mortals believed that killing would bring bad luck, and cultivators and demons also believed that completely destroying a soul would bring about the wrath of the heavens. But in this world, if you look deeper, you would realize that these two kinds of worries were actually based on reality. For mortals, there were indeed ghosts in this world and they could bring bad luck. To the demons, before the black and white Yama Lords went into hiding, their souls belonged to them. Someone had stolen a large number of souls from their hands, so naturally they would be added to the list. From a more mundane point of view, whether it was killing someone or destroying a soul, it would have an impact on interpersonal relationships such as forming a death grudge. Because of these things, this idea was passed down. Therefore, when Lord Vast Ocean killed Lord Donghai in the formation, his soul was not destroyed. The destruction of both body and soul was indeed very shocking to cultivators and demons. However, Li Yunxin had been influenced by atheism in his previous life. When he arrived in this world, he quickly understood everything and knew that there was no such thing as karma or retribution in this world. Therefore, his methods were extremely sinister. Not many of those who died in his hands had their souls spared. Even if there were, they were all imprisoned by him. And now he was going to refine his soul. Lord Houhan had done this a few times in the past, but only now did he realize that things were not looking good. Just as he was about to open his mouth and shout something about karma, the iron chain in Li Yunxin's hand suddenly shook and bound his body. His boundless Dragon King's soul had just fused with the fish demon's body not long ago, so it wasn't very solid. Li Yunxin used his profound realm's magical power to shake his wrist again, and forcibly pulled it out. Lord Houhan let out a sharp roar, his body twisted like a fish. But it was useless. The iron chain tightened again, binding his soul like a rice dumpling and pressing it to the size of a palm. A golden light appeared in Li Yunxin's hand. He grabbed the soul and slapped it violently on the scroll. Collect. The roar stopped abruptly. Something that looked like a water stain quickly appeared on the empty southwest side of the scroll. Then it quickly expanded and lines of different shades appeared. When the color became darker and started to slowly dance, a magic brush appeared in Li Yunxin's hand. He quickly drew on the scroll. It didn't look like he was painting, but more like he was straightening out those living auras. After a while, the pattern on the paper stopped dancing, and a faint sigh came from the paper. At this time, if he used his magical power to take a closer look, he could actually see countless details in this small scroll. It was as if he was zooming in from a very high altitude. He first saw the clouds, then the sea, the waves, the creatures in the sea, the parasites on the surface of the creatures, the tiny sand on the surface of the parasites, and the even smaller microorganisms inside the parasites. If his eyesight was strong enough, Li Yunxin felt that he should be able to see even more microscopic particles, the things that formed the essence of this world. From the theory of painting, the world in this painting was the real world. The real world existed in two spaces at the same time. He knew how he did it. He acted according to his understanding of painting techniques. But he didn't know how he did it. He didn't know what the deeper principles behind those techniques were. This world still didn't seek for thorough understanding. In fact, they didn't have the conditions to seek profound understanding. They recognized some patterns and used them to their advantage. They pursued the effect of using it too much, but few people explored the details behind it. However, painting. It was said that Shinmu and Yu Meng's mind created it for him. The star formation that Shinmu had buried under Changji Town had been copied by Li Yunxin, and now it had become his fan. Shinmu must know everything, but Qin Zhao still hadn't found any clues about him. Now he had collected 8 of the 9 seas. The West Sea was the only place that was still empty. Because Red Madam had killed the Dragon King of the West Sea in advance, he didn't know whether she had also destroyed his divine soul or let him escape. But even the latter was hard to find in such a vast ocean. He had to think of some other ways. Li Yunxin put away the scroll and rushed out of the sea. At the moment he didn't hide his powerful aura at all. Everywhere he went, the water demons avoided him. They all knew that this was the new overlord of the sea. Before they could figure out this overlord's temper, it was best to avoid him. After being separated from Red Lady for 2 days, he had to go back to his original place. He had a good habit, he was generous, but he wasn't picky when searching for treasures. 150,000 demon soldiers had fallen into the water with one move, so there must be many treasures on him. He couldn't let those treasures rust at the bottom of the sea. After killing the vast Dragon King, he had to pick them up again. But after running on the surface of the sea for a quarter of an hour, Li Yunxin suddenly frowned and stopped. He realized that there was a powerful aura nearby. It was the aura of the profound realm. It didn't move. It only stopped 3 meters away as if waiting for him. He was prepared for this. Since he had killed the Dragon King of the 9 seas, either the Shinryu or the lifeless immortal sect would contact him. Maybe later, maybe a few days later. He used his power and looked into the distance. Then he took a deep breath and his face turned cold. That person wasn't from the Shinryu or the lifeless immortal sect. It was Li Chunfeng. Li Yunxin stayed in place for 3 or 4 breaths before flying away. Li Chunfeng stood on a reef with his hands behind his back. He had returned to his original appearance. He was wearing a Taoist robe with fluttering sleeves, showing the demeanor of an expert. Li Yunxin stopped 3 meters away from him. He stared at him with an expressionless face. The two stared at each other for a while. Li Yunxin whispered, "Where is Shangguanyu?" Li Chunfeng tilted his head to the east. "She's safe. I'll bring her back to land in a few days. She didn't know what I did. She's still your mother." "Didn't know?" Li Yunxin stared at him. "When didn't she know? Didn't she know that you faked your death and escaped?" Li Chunfeng shook his head calmly. "I lied to her. She gave birth to you and knew I was going to use you." "Use?" Li Yunxin said coldly. But the person in front of him continued, "But you're her child. As a mother, she had to deal with the conflict between her husband and her son. The pain is not something you and I can understand. After that, I was the one who forced her to escape. I told her you're not the person we're looking for. You'll have a stable life if I leave you. Don't blame her." "Stable." Li Yunxin sneered again. "I did everything after that." Li Chunfeng sighed calmly. "I just didn't expect her to come to East Sea again. It wasn't in my plan. I thought Lord Donghai would let her live a happy life, but your plan." Li Yunxin laughed again. "I've always wanted to ask you. What are you going to do? I'm not the person you're looking for. Why do you keep pushing me? I'm not interested in your affairs, but you've forced me to this point. Now, I'm no longer under your control. Is this also in your plan?" He said these words in a harsh tone, as if he was facing an enemy, without the slightest hint of affection. Li Chunfeng was silent for a while. Then he smiled. "Good. Compared to the last time you saw me, you're much calmer now. This is what my son Li Chunfeng should be like. This is the only way we can do what we should do." "Son? What we should do?" Li Yunxin sneered again and again, as if he didn't know which word to refute first. "Li Chunfeng, I've changed my body several times. My soul, you should know, doesn't belong to this world. I have nothing to do with you now. If you dare to say this again, don't blame me for not giving you a chance to speak." Li Chunfeng smiled again. When parents in the world adopt a child, the physical body and soul have nothing to do with each other. But how can I deny the kinship? I haven't passed the tribulation of love, so I can't be exempt. A golden knife suddenly appeared in Li Yunxin's hand and flew toward him with a buzz. "Shut up." But Li Chunfeng raised his hand and grabbed the blade. The knife hummed in the air and couldn't move forward. "Okay, let's not talk about this for now." He sighed and threw the knife back to Li Yunxin. But the latter didn't catch it. The golden knife sank into the sea. Let's talk about business first. What we need to do. Li Chunfeng thought for a while. We're still missing Lord Shihai, right? Chapter 706. Li Yunxin's expression froze. But then his face turned gloomier, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. What did you say? When you came to the East Sea, I taught the Lord of the East Sea how to transform his soul into his true body. I asked him to test you with a clone. That was because I thought he might be a good match for your mother. So I didn't want him to die. Li Chunfeng seemed to be talking about someone else, and every word that came out of his mouth was emotionless. Since the true body was transformed from the soul, it was enough for you to understand the chi of heaven and earth above the East Sea. You did it? It was only later that I realized that demons couldn't understand human emotions. But that's a story for another time. I tried my best to encourage him to follow your plan and asked the Dragon King of the Nine Seas to join forces to kill you. It was also to cooperate with you. You're my son. I knew that after you entered the mystic realm, you would be able to understand the divine art of painting, and you would come up with a way to gather the dragon souls of the Nine Seas and finally seize Shinryu's life. Now you've done it? But Red Lady came suddenly, so you still lack the map of West Sea's chi. Li Chunfeng looked at him and searched in his sleeve. He took out a scroll and threw it to him. Take it. I found the Lord of the West Sea's true body. So the map of West Sea's chi is here. Then you have the complete map of the Nine Seas. Li Yunxin took the scroll subconsciously. He frowned and stared at Li Chunfeng for a long time before slowly unfolding the map. It was indeed the direction of West Sea's chi. It was indeed a painting technique. He looked up suddenly. You. Good? Good. Li Yunxin clenched the scroll in his hand and squeezed it out of shape. Is this your Southernwood House's plan again? It's mine, Li Chunfeng said calmly. I'm just temporarily borrowing Southernwood House's body. It's also ours. I can't do it without you. What the hell are you going to do? This time Li Chunfeng was silent for a long time. Then he shook his head. Don't blame me for not telling you. But in this matter, one of us must be in the light and the other in the dark. I am in the dark, you are in the light. So the more you know, the more likely you are to fail. You only need to know that I am different from you, from those cultivators, and even from Qin Zhao and the owner of Southwood House. I was born in this world. I can't sit back and watch it be destroyed. Li Yunxin furrowed his brows and quickly thought about these words. But what could he figure out in such a short time? He used to think that Li Chunfeng worked for the owner of Southernwood Residence, but now it seemed like he had his own agenda. Moreover, he even used the owner of the Southernwood Residence. What exactly did he want to do? It didn't seem to be something that could be described with the word ambitious. But the next moment he clenched his teeth and said, Li Chunfeng, do you think I'll believe your nonsense? Maybe it was the Taoist Qing Shui who told you to say this. Let me ask you. If everything I've been doing on this ocean is in your plan, why do you think I won't die when the demons of the Nine Seas surround me? What if I'm really dead? Li Chunfeng heaved a sigh of relief. Everything has its ups and downs. People have their own ups and downs. I never thought you wouldn't die when the demons of the Nine Seas surround you. I know you've been in danger many times in the past. And I never thought you wouldn't die. But since you're my son, if you can't do these things, then no one in this world can. You're my last hope. And this hope of mine, either I succeed or I die. Don't blame me for being cruel. One day you'll understand my painstaking efforts. He smiled again. But so what if I don't understand? In this world there are few smart people and many stupid people. If everyone can understand something, then it's not something we should do. Good. Everyone is drunk, but I'm the only sober one. Li Yunxin slowly calmed down. But there was only coldness in this calmness. His hand hung by his side, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to grab something. Then tell me, what should I do next in your great plan? You hate me now and even want to kill me. He even wanted to kill me. Li Chunfeng sighed. But there's no need to ask what I should do next. Everything I've done for you in the past has pushed you to this point. But my son, you always ask me what I want to do, what Munanju wants to do. Have you ever asked yourself, what do you want to do? Li Yunxin was stunned. His body seemed to stiffen as if made of molten iron. Li Chunfeng shook his head lightly, his expression solemn. You have ties in this world. Some friends, confidants. In the past, you only did things to protect yourself. To protect your own life, to protect their lives. Now that you have great power, it's easy for you to protect yourself and others. But now, what do you want to do? Cultivators want to cultivate to coexist with heaven and earth and ascend to the heavenly realm. But that's too vague. Demons are muddle-headed and live according to their nature. They only know how to fight for power and profit. You don't want to be either of them. Sooner or later you'll want to know what you should do in this world. Power, wealth, fancy clothes, and delicious food are all meaningless to you. Aside from living, what else should you do? He was silent for a while. So don't ask me, ask yourself. My stratagem has run out at this point. I've pushed you onto the path. What you should do next is not something I can control or interfere with. If you want to find the answer to this question, then go and know everything. His figure gradually faded. When that time comes, you won't need anyone to tell you. Remember my words too. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The dragon kings of the 9 seas are not that oriole yet. A strong sea breeze blew. Li Chuanfeng's incarnation scattered into spots of light. Li Yunxin seemed to wake up from a dream. He clawed at the void but only grabbed the void. He roared angrily. His voice shook the ocean, and the demons under the water all retreated as if a disaster was about to befall them. After roaring for a dozen breaths, the monkey demon laughed. "Ah, strange. You, a demon, are actually a human? I think that person has some skills. He's more than 100 miles away. Since you're so angry, I'll help you kill both of them. What do you think?" Li Yunxin stared at the distant ocean and stopped talking. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Don't worry, great sage. It's my own business. One day I'll have to solve it myself." He gasped. The monkey demon's voice became disinterested. Tutu. Where's the Shinryu king you mentioned? I feel uncomfortable all over." Li Yunxin took a deep breath. He stared into the distance unwillingly. "I'll see him soon." After this change, there were no more disturbances on the way back to the stone mountain in the ocean. But Li Yunxin knew that the ocean was not as peaceful as it looked. Something strange was brewing everywhere. The peaceful days after killing the Dragon King of the 9 seas would not last for long. Within a few days there would be another huge wave. Previously, the Dragon King and the others struggled to dig a big hole in the middle of the stone mountain where the monkey demon resided. Li Yunxin looked at it later and felt that the hole was right in the middle. The wall was smooth and the hole was very deep. After some repairs, it would become a stone hall in the mountain. There were no islands or reefs around here, and the stone mountain stood there, giving off a majestic vibe that looked down on the ocean. Thus, he used the magic treasures of Xianmen and the divine art of painting to fix it. Now that he entered the stone hall, Red Madam was already inside. The hall was empty, only the ground and walls were as smooth as a mirror. Many luminous pearls were embedded in the walls as if they were worthless, causing the hall to be as bright as day with mysterious light lingering around. Li Yunxin landed on the ground with a gloomy face. He stood at the entrance of the hole without a door or window, staring at the ocean in a daze. Red Madam slowly walked over from behind him and stood there quietly for a while. Then she said in a low voice, "The vast Dragon King? You didn't catch him?" "Yes." "Then, we met Li Chunfeng," Li Yunxin said in a low voice. "He ran away." The female demon was silent for a while, then said cautiously, "After all, Yunxin, I know. But killing your father is not auspicious. Letting him go might not be. Give me a quarter of an hour." Li Yunxin sighed. "A quarter of an hour? What? Let me hate him for a while." Li Yunxin said no more. He closed his eyes. He gritted his teeth as if he was silently cursing someone in his heart. His sleeves fluttered, showing that he was really angry. Red Madam stood next to him. After a while she said faintly, "A quarter of an hour." The person next to her slowly opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. She leaned over and gently massaged his temple. Li Yunxin didn't refuse. After a while. "He first told me that Shangguan Yu didn't know anything. He also said that he would take Shangguan Yu to a safe place." Li Yunxin said calmly, "He was using her to threaten me. He told me that I wouldn't kill him." He closed his eyes and opened them again. He also admitted that those things were all arranged by him in the past. "The things I've done to him, it's either succeed or die trying." He also said. In a low voice, he repeated what Li Chunfeng had said. His tone was as calm as water, but it was obviously a pool of stagnant water. After listening to him, Red Madam was in a daze for a while before she said, What he said? Do you think he lied to you?" Li Yunxin took a deep breath and lowered his head. "What do you think?" Red Madam bit her lips. "I think maybe, some of it is true. Although you hate him. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and said, "The thing about my possession in the city of Wei. Then I faked my death and entered Yunshan. Those who were in it at that time wouldn't know about these things. Li Chunfeng likes to use tricks and make others follow his plan. I also like to do that. But until now, I have more and more experienced the feelings of those who were in it. What Lu Gongzan and the others felt at that time." Speaking of this, he suddenly laughed and shook his head. "I hate myself. I'm no different from him. And I actually think what he said makes sense. I hate that I actually think what he said might be true." Chapter 707. He turned his face and looked at Red Lady. "I've become the person I hate the most." The female monster didn't know what to say for a while and could only remain silent. The two stood at the entrance of the cave and enjoyed the sea breeze for a while. Li Yunxin shook his head. "Help me guard the place. I need to do something." After saying this, he turned around and walked into the hall. Red Lady seemed to have gradually gotten used to his brainless thoughts. She didn't ask much and only whispered, "How long will it take? If it's short, in the blink of an eye. If it's long, in a quarter of an hour." Li Yunxin walked to the center of the stone hall and stopped. He took out 2 scrolls from his sleeve and slowly unfolded them. The bigger one was his original chi chart of the 8 seas. The smaller one was thrown to him by Li Chunfeng just now. He stood and looked at the 2 paintings. No one knew what he was thinking. But in the end he waved his hand. Li Chunfeng's scroll floated up. Then he waved his hand again. The smaller scroll silently sank into the bigger one. Like a bowl of water being poured into a pond, it completely merged with the bigger one. Li Chunfeng's painting method was exactly the same as Li Yunxin's. It was as if he had already considered the situation of merging with the wider heaven and earth when he was painting. Therefore, the connection was so perfect that it didn't even need the slightest bit of adjustment. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned for a while. Then his figure flashed and disappeared into the painting. In Red Lady's view, he disappeared from the place where he was standing. But in Li Yunxin's view, the whole world just flashed for a moment. He was still in the stone hall and his position didn't change at all. But there was no trace of Red Lady in the hall. When he looked at the space between the sea and the sky outside the hall, it was also a piece of fog. This was the world in the painting. It was also at this time that Li Yunxin experienced an indescribable sense of vastness. The original stone hall was also very vast. The space between the sea and the sky was also very vast. But the sense of vastness in the real world was a kind of feeling, not a real experience. Standing alone in the vast expanse of heaven and earth, one would know that one could see everything in all directions with a single glance. One would know that no matter which direction one ran in, there would be no hindrance. But this was just looking. Compared to people, space was still independent and separated. A person was still confined in the small space where his body was, as if a person was submerged in mud. There was nothing but mud all around, which was also a kind of vastness. But this person was wrapped up and felt restrained. Of course he could run in all directions, but no matter where he ran he was still wrapped in mud. His body squeezed out a space in the mud, and this space was filled by his body at the same time. His body was fixed by several dimensions, and he could never truly experience all the vast space. The space of the real world was like this mud. In the past, Li Yunxin didn't notice anything until he escaped into the space he had created. In this world he was a true god. All the small sounds and changes could not escape his eyes and ears. All the space was entrusted to his body. He was this world and this world was him. If he cast aside this materialized body, he could exist anywhere at the same time. This was true vastness. He took a step forward. The stone palace was instantly left behind. He had already appeared on the sea thousands of miles away from the stone palace. There was a person standing in the void above the sea. With a thought from Li Yunxin, this piece of void turned into solid ground. He slowly sat down, and a magnificent palace appeared in the void. He sat on a large chair and silently looked at the person in front of him. That person was Xie Sheng. His body was covered in blood as if he had died countless times. But every time, which was the truth, he would be reborn. In this world, his life and death were not in his control. All the power was in the hands of Li Yunxin. Xie Sheng slowly opened his eyes and let out a low moan. Li Yunxin's figure was reflected in his eyes. He was slightly stunned. But after being stunned for a moment, he immediately fell to the ground and crawled in front of Li Yunxin, crying loudly, "Kill me, kill me! I beg you, kill me!" The pride and contentment he had before were completely gone. Now he was even more humble than a reptile. He seemed to have no other thoughts in his mind except to beg for death. But even so, he did not dare to touch Li Yunxin's shoes with his hands. He crawled 3 feet away, trembling all over as if all his muscles and bones had been pulled out. Li Yunxin quietly looked at him for a while and then said, "Before I am satisfied with your answer, you will not die. Xiexing, I will give you another chance today." He paused. What on earth are those elders on Cloud Mountain? He had asked this question once more than 10 days ago. But that time, Xiexing did not give him a satisfactory answer, so he left this picture scroll. However, a dozen days in the real world could become an extremely long few years in this picture scroll, especially when he was alone with that mermaid. Several years of torture could change many things, even a person with a firm mind like Xiexing was no exception. Xiexing was still crying bitterly and his words were completely different from 10 days ago. I'll tell you now, they are all celestial beings. Reincarnation of celestial beings. The Freemasons have already told me this answer. Li Yunxin looked down at him coldly. Then why don't I catch a Freemasons and ask them? Also, don't cry. Xiexing immediately stopped talking and even choked to the point that he could not breathe. He tried hard to pat his chest and finally let out a breath. No, the reincarnation that the Freemasons mentioned is a religious reincarnation, but the reincarnation I'm talking about, I mean those elder souls, divine souls, consciousness, whatever you call it here, are all real celestial beings. He gritted his teeth. The real celestial beings fell into a shell. Shell. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. Shell. I'll tell you everything today and I only want to die. Xiexing's face twisted and his fingers spasmed. This is the secret of those cultivators here, the secret of Daotong Kenzo. They can't cultivate immortality. They are just a group of animals. Animals raised by celestial beings. Li Yunxin finally moved slightly. He slowly leaned forward. It had been more than a month since the mahogany sealed Xiexing and the mermaid into the painting. In this world in the painting, more than 10 years had passed. In these 10 years, Li Yunxin had come in 4 times. The first time, Xiexing was full of anger, even angrier than when he was just sealed into the painting. In the first few years he was first afraid, then desperate, and then begged for a quick death. But his request was not answered, and the pain turned into anger. That time Li Yunxin got nothing. So a few more years passed in the painting. When Li Yunxin appeared again, Xiexing became extremely obedient. He said many things calmly, but in the end, Li Yunxin exposed everything he said. Everything he said was a well-thought-out lie. If not for his lack of understanding of this world, he would have almost deceived Li Yunxin. When Li Yunxin came here for the 3rd time, Xiexing's mood collapsed again. This time he didn't say anything but only begged for death. So a few more years passed, and now, with only a few words and dozens of seconds, Xiexing revealed the truth that even moved Li Yunxin, if it could be proved to be the truth. You tell me in detail. Li Yunxin stared at him. I'm not in a good mood now. Originally, I planned to torture you to vent my anger. So, if what you said this time is not the truth, it's all the truth. Xiexing shouted, don't you have the treasures and information of Yunshan? Find it in those materials. Find it and have a look. See if Grandpa D looks familiar. There should be such a person in history. Li Yunxin stared at him for a while, then touched his left pinky finger. He did have the materials. There were many cultivation methods in Qian, Kuan, and Qi halls, as well as the statues of the past sages. Over 50,000 years, there were more than 400 sages. Li Yunxin's expression froze. It was said that there were also more than 400 elders of the Freemasonry Association on Yunshan. Without hesitation he immediately took out a picture book. This picture book was also a treasure, just like the display technology in his world. The portraits on the thin paper were lifelike, without any distortion. In the past, Li Yunxin never thought about this, but now, he quickly checked the faces of the past sages, and after more than 10 seconds, he really saw Grandpa D, or rather, Grandpa D's body. Daotong's 98th master of calligraphy. Seeing his expression, Xiexing immediately shouted, Isn't it? Is it? But Li Yunxin did not answer him immediately. Because at this moment, many thoughts, those that had puzzled him before but had been hanging in the air, became clear because of this portrait and Xiexing's few words. It even made him feel annoyed. Why didn't he think of it before? For example, the so-called Taishan Wangqing. From the moment he came to this world, he had doubts about this word. The Taishan Wangqing was particular about the Taishan Wangqing in this world, which literally meant to forget and get rid of all emotions. Because of this principle of cultivation, the cultivators of the Taishan Wangqing cultivated themselves to the point that they were neither human nor demon. The ultimate pursuit of cultivating to the Taishang Wang Qing was to get rid of all their emotions. But what was the difference between this and a moving stone? When he was in Little Rock Canyon, he heard Yu Meng describe this state. He was muddle-headed, almost unaware of it. All his reactions were almost instinctive, and he was only waiting for ascension. But what was the use of ascension and immortality like this? Even he felt that something was wrong. Didn't those cultivators think about it? But what could they do even if they thought about it? The Taishang Wang Qing had been established for 50,000 years. This was a cultivation method passed down by the Deva. Chapter 708. Li Yunxin let out a sigh and looked at Xiexing seriously. You mean the celestial beings passed down their skills to the human world? From the beginning it was not to protect the common people or maintain the order of the world, but just to let them cultivate like this. Then they cultivated to the realm of supreme indifference. Their bodies were extremely strong, but their emotions and thoughts were almost lost and then turned into a body, a vessel. Xiexing nodded repeatedly. Then those celestial beings ran into this vessel and ran to the world. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then whispered, "It sounds like your explanation is reasonable. No wonder when Fu Liangliang's body was destroyed, it was said that an elder gave him a body as strong as the supreme indifference." But the lies you told me before are also impeccable. Let me ask you. What you said is true. What are celestial beings? Since they can pass down skills for mortals to cultivate, why don't they come to the ground themselves? Do they have to spend so much effort? Celestial beings? What celestial beings? Xiexing shouted, "It's just because of a disaster a long time ago, the destruction of the world, they were lucky to escape. Why don't they come down directly? Think about it. It's like you are a person living on the land and I am a person living in the sea. Can you just run to the sea and live? You have to change your body." Li Yunxin thought for a while, then frowned. The situation on the sea and on the land is different from the current situation. I know what your world is like. You should have some idea about the world I came from. Then let's not talk in the language of this world. Let me ask you. If your world is developed to the extent of interstellar travel, then what about cloning technology? Why don't you clone some bodies? Why do you have to wait for hundreds or thousands of years for the next one to come? Xiexing's expression froze when he heard Li Yunxin's words, and he instantly became a little confused. But Li Yunxin knew that this expression was not because of his lie was exposed, but probably because some kind of as if a lifetime had passed feeling. How could he not have felt this before? Xiexing had been in this world for more than 10 years, from a civilized world. In these 10 years, what was the difference between living in this world and eating raw meat and drinking blood? Then, just as he was about to see some light and hope, he threw him here to suffer torture. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had passed. If he didn't use his divine ability to protect him from losing his mind, this fellow would have gone mad long ago. In such an environment there was no one he could communicate with. But now, when he suddenly heard Li Yunxin say those words that could only be heard in the civilized world of the past, how could he not be shocked? Li Yunxin gave him 2 seconds to sigh. He shouted, "Speak." Xiexing shuddered and hurriedly said, "It's different, of course it's different. It's useless. Does your world know about nuclear weapons?" "Of course I know." "Then think about why those who use broadswords and spears can't make nuclear weapons. This was because their understanding of the microscopic world had yet to reach a certain level. But the microscopic world is not something you can see with the naked eye. Let me ask you this. If you can't even observe molecules in your world, how can you see atoms, develop theories, and build nuclear weapons?" When he said these words he became excited. At this time, as if he had finally found someone who could talk about the civilized world, even if this person had tortured him in all kinds of ways, he couldn't care about anything else for a moment. Since he had said it, he might as well say it to his heart's content. Think about this world again. Xiexing pointed at himself excitedly. "You locked me here. How did you do it? Can you think of how you did it? From your words, I know that you are also a person with basic scientific knowledge. Is there any theory in the world you came from, even an uncertain one, that could possibly explain this phenomenon? Not to mention the teleportation of the demon's soul through the air. All of this without the help of any equipment. Haven't you realized?" Xiexing's hand twitched and scratched his face, as if he was about to lose control of his emotions. "This world and your world and my world. Some physical laws are different. Even if most of the places here look the same, there is gravity and fire. But in essence, many laws are completely different. Compared to your world and my world, one is the land and the other is the ocean. Those celestial beings were originally people on the land. How could they directly go to the ocean? You said cloning, even the laws of physics and some constants may be different. How could they clone like in your world and my world? Of course they have to follow the laws of this world, to do things like cultivation. To make mortals use this method to cultivate their bodies. These kinds of cultivation. The immortal cultivators in this world may be ignorant and backward in our eyes and have gone on a crooked path. But in fact this method has a way out here, to do science and technology. It is like doing witchcraft in our world. Xiexing said all these in one breath and tore his face hard. I've said it all, I've said it all. Let me die. Let me die. But Li Yunxin was silent for a while and suddenly said coldly, do you think I'm illiterate? If some of the basic laws and constants are different, it means that electrons and protons may not exist. They don't exist, let alone atoms and molecules. Maybe the whole universe doesn't have any matter that we can imagine, or even the concept of the universe doesn't exist. But this world still has mountains and rivers? Do you want to be locked up for hundreds of years? Xiexing lost his composure and shouted, what do you know? What do you know? He jumped up from the ground and his face became extremely fierce. In our world there are starships that can surpass the speed of light. The whole drive core is only the size of a palm. You are not illiterate, so tell me, how are you going to do it? Can you imagine how to do it? Arrogance is ignorance. Don't use your poor limited knowledge to infer the whole world. Stupid thing. Dog. Ah. I'll kill you, dog. Ah. There are too many worlds that you haven't seen. I'll kill you. He shouted hysterically, stretched out his hands and pounced on Li Yunxin like a zombie. Xiexing was on the verge of losing his mind again. Li Yunxin sighed, kicked him away and reached out to grab his head. Xiexing's body froze. A magic pen appeared in his palm and he started to repair his body. After a quarter of an hour he kicked him again and sent him into the sea. This had been done countless times, to mend his sanity. But it would take a long time for Xiexing to recover. He couldn't ask any more questions for the time being. Li Yunxin didn't leave immediately. He sat back on the throne and thought about what Xiexing had just said. If what he said was true, it could explain some of the things that happened when he met Grandmaster D in Cloud Mountain. Grandmaster D didn't show any magical power from beginning to end and was doing things like a mortal. If the so-called celestial being passed down the cultivation method and created the celestial sect of wonders just to cultivate a body that could shelter them, then it made sense that they only had a physical body. But what about the Freemasons? The Xianmen belonged to the celestial beings. Why did Grandmaster D and those people control the Freemasons to corrupt the cultivators of the Xianmen? The wandering souls and the Freemasons did things. At this time it did seem to be the means of those elders. They used the wandering souls to occupy one body after another just like those elders. So, Li Yunxin frowned. Was it related to the fact that the celestial beings had never issued a decree for nearly 1,000 years? Grandmaster D and the others, more than 400 people, had obtained the body of the Grand Supreme and descended to the human world. Then they supported their own forces outside the Xianmen and fought against it. Did this also mean that they were fighting against the celestial beings, who were still in the astral world? Did something happen to the astral world where the celestial beings lived and made it uninhabitable? That was why they used this method to descend to the earth. Now, these more than 400 reincarnated celestial beings had obtained benefits and tasted the sweetness. They turned around and kicked the single log bridge from the other shore to this shore? Destroy the Xianmen. So that it would be difficult for the Grand Supreme and ignorant cultivators to appear in the human world. So that the world would be under their control. No. It would never be like this. Li Yunxin firmly denied his own idea. Even people like him and Xiexing could not live in peace in this world. They had seen a wider world and could not live in peace in this world. Moreover, during the Battle of Mount Yunshan, Grandmaster D had been indifferent to what had happened under Mount Yunshan. It was as if those things which would cause chaos in the world, make people miserable, and even shake the foundation of human existence, were not worth mentioning in his eyes. He had more important things to do. Yes, more important things. For people like them, what was more important? Leave this world. Leave this world. According to Grandmaster D and Xiexing, this world was about to be destroyed. Then, as a key figure and an emissary from another world, Xiexing must have something very important with him. It was very likely that it was the way to leave this world. This could explain Grandmaster D's quick change in attitude when he knew that he was not a visitor from that world. Li Yunxin suddenly stood up. Xiexing. This bastard. He had been tortured in this painting for 10 years, but he still wanted to hide something. From the beginning to the end, he did not explain what he was hiding on his body. The elders of Mount Yunshan knew Xie Sheng's secret. The people of Southern Wood Residence, or at least the owner of Southern Wood Residence, also knew Xie Sheng's secret. And what Li Chunfeng said we were going to do might be related to this secret. Chapter 709. More than one person had mentioned that the world would face a great calamity and be destroyed. Li Yunxin recalled a very inconspicuous sentence among the many things Li Chunfeng had said. I am different from you, those cultivators, even Qin Zhao and the owner of Southernwood House. I was born in this world. I can't watch it be destroyed. This sentence also confirmed his guess. Li Chunfeng couldn't watch the world be destroyed. This meant that the people he had mentioned, Qin Zhao, the owner of Southernwood House, and the elders of Cloud Mountain could. They wanted to escape from this world. And the key to escape lay in Xie Sheng. Xie Sheng was in his hands. He had actually, casually grabbed such a trump card. Li Yunxin's emotions surged. But he immediately took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He sat on the throne and looked around at the sea and sky, letting his consciousness gradually merge with it. Thus, waves rose on the surface of the sea. Countless small ripples spread out, as if there was an invisible hand caressing the surface of the water. After a full 15 minutes, the waves finally calmed down. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. Because the words Li Chunfeng had said earlier still lingered in his mind, he, Li Chunfeng, couldn't watch the world be destroyed. If there was really a possibility that such a day would come, could he, Li Yunxin, do it? Could he sit back and watch as the world was destroyed when he could have cared less about himself? Just a few months ago his answer would have been yes. This world where demons ran amok. Not only was there no karma, there was also no justice to speak of. As for himself, he was one of the many people who had made the world worse. But he knew that there was no other way. He was surrounded by quagmires, darkness, and danger. This world hadn't shown him any kindness from the beginning. Even if he had mistakenly thought that there was kindness, it would later reveal its sinister side. In such a world, how good could he do? He could only be worse. Only by being worse than many people could he find a chance of survival. At that time he had nothing to miss about this world. All he could do was perish. But later, he saw a few spots of light in the darkness. He sensed some tender kindness. Only now, after knowing more and experiencing more emotions, did he realize how difficult it was to obtain that light and kindness. Whether it was his previous life or this life, those insignificant things were things that he had never possessed. If she were to ask him now, would he watch the world perish? He thought for a long time but could not come up with an answer. There was a beast in his heart, a beast with a hideous face and dark fur roaring at him. She told him that to lay any responsibility upon his shoulders, even a little, would be to invite no end of trouble. But Li Yunxin sat alone for a long time. Only then did he realize that he was worrying for nothing. He didn't even know what the so-called "this world will be destroyed" was all about. The invasion of the devil realm mentioned by Gong Di was not credible. But that was just an excuse to dismiss a child. He had to find the real reason himself. At this time he couldn't help but recall Li Chunfeng's previous words. He said that this was the end of his plan, and that it was up to Li Yunxin to decide what to do in the future. When he heard those words, Li Yunxin was dismissive. He thought they were all empty words. Li Chunfeng must have other tricks up his sleeves. But only now did he realize the meaning behind the other party's words. Li Chunfeng. Since he was Namuju's right-hand man, and even temporarily borrowed Namuju's body, as he said, he should know these things. Then, there was no need for him to push him around in the future. Because now Li Yunxin was eager to find out the truth of these things, even if he hadn't made a decision yet. But there was one more thing. Grand Supreme. Grand Supreme. What kind of realm was it? As Red Lady said just a few days ago, Li Yunxin had a way to make himself enter the Grand Supreme realm. At that time he told Red Lady that there were advantages to having a high realm, and disadvantages to having a low realm. On the other hand, it was also because he always had a secret worry in his heart. He didn't know what the so-called Grand Supreme realm was like. So far, except for the great sage he heard, Li Yunxin hadn't seen any real Grand Supreme. The great sage's situation was different from everyone else in this world, so he couldn't be used as a reference. Moreover, he didn't seem to be very interested in these things, and he didn't say anything from beginning to end. Probably in his eyes, Xie Sheng's more than 10 years of imprisonment and torture was just a trivial matter. In his vague memory, there should still be impressions of being suppressed for 500 years, causing havoc in the heavenly palace, and so on. In other words, this great sage was a person who had seen the world. How could he make a fuss about these things? However, apart from him, the two sages of Cloud Mountain were proved to be possessed by wandering souls. The so-called Grand Supreme Shinryu had also lost most of its power. There is also a legendary King Rock who is also the Grand Supreme in the legend. He should be born now, right? But Li Yunxin didn't see what kind of power he had. From the beginning he felt that the Grand Supreme realm described by Xianmen was evil. Now it proved that his worry was right. He had seen many mysterious realms. There were also mysterious realms among the demons. Therefore he knew that the existence of mysterious realms was only to strengthen one's power, and even to change some rules. But Grand Supreme had no reference. Under such circumstances he didn't want to be a test subject. Now it proved that his worry was right. The Grand Supreme of Xianmen was just a body for people to use. Then, what about the Grand Supreme of the demons? He had to figure out all these questions before he would allow him to take that step. He was in a daze for a while and then came out of the painting. Red Madam was still standing at the entrance of the cave, guarding him. Li Yunxin asked in a low voice, "How long has it been?" The banshee thought for a moment, "Less than a quarter of an hour." Good. Li Yunxin put away the painting on the ground and looked around. "We still need it later. Why are you still here?" There was another person in the corner of the stone hall. It was Qin Fengzi, sitting on the ground wolfing down food. He was holding a fish in his hand, which was roasted with fire. Red Madam came over. When you entered the painting, he came down from the top. He said he was always up there and didn't dare to move. He was starving these days, so he came to ask how to deal with him. Li Yunxin was stunned. He realized that he had forgotten about him. Actually, he didn't forget. 5 days ago, after killing the Seven Seas Dragon King, Li Yunxin and Red Madam went separately to catch the souls of those dragon souls, and didn't give Qin Fengzi any explanation. Strictly speaking, Qin Fengzi was Li Yunxin's captive, and not his ally. Since Li Yunxin left, he was in a dilemma. If he left without permission and was caught, this was very likely, he would be tortured and might even die. So he had to stay. He waited for 3 days, but there was no news from Li Yunxin. The nearby sea was deathly silent and frighteningly empty. He waited alone on top of the stone pillar, but he didn't know that the two had gone to the bottom of the mountain to dig a hole. A few days later the sea was howling and he was hungry and cold. He wanted to go to the bottom of the mountain to hide from the wind, but he ran into Red Madam, who was standing at the entrance of the cave. He was almost smashed into meat paste. Li Yunxin frowned. "Why are you still here?" Qin Fengzi swallowed the food in his mouth. Go. Did the Dragon King let me go?" Seeing him like this, Li Yunxin realized that she hadn't tasted the taste of food for a long time. Food was a pleasure for him. Unlike this cultivator in the state of the transcendent, he still needed to eat occasionally. "You are an idiot," Li Yunxin humphed. He was obviously not in a good mood. "Have you ever thought about the reason why I kept you alive? Wasn't it because I wanted you to tell everything you saw here to your ancestor? Do you really want to die by staying here?" Qin Fengzi quickly waved his hands. No, I don't want to die, I don't want to die." He hesitated for a while and said, "Dragon King? Do you really want me to go back and tell?" "Yes. Get lost." Qin Fengzi heaved a sigh of relief. "Then I have to say something? Dragon King, please don't be angry." He carefully observed Li Yunxin's reaction. But the other did not bother to give him any guarantees. He put down the food in his hands and stood up. He touched his beard again. He cleared his throat and said, "Dragon King, my ancestor asked me to deliver a message to the Dragon King." Li Yunxin gave him a sideways glance. A mysterious smile suddenly appeared on his face. "Little you, what did I say before? This person is quite capable. He is able to cause trouble right under our noses." "Dragon King, you have misunderstood," Qin Fengzi said in a deep voice. "It was my ancestor who was able to send a message through my divine sense." When he spoke before, he sounded panicked. But now that he had to pass on a message for that 10,000-year-old ancestor, he had to calm himself down. "Then what did your ancestor say?" Qin Fengzi raised his hand and bowed to the east. "Ancestor said that the reason why the Dragon King asked me to stay was to leave a communication channel between our two sides. Since the Dragon King has good intentions, Ancestor thinks that there is still a chance to talk." "Yes, he is right." Li Yunxin put his hands behind his back. "And more. Ancestor said that he knows that the Dragon King and the Shinryu have a grudge against each other. Since the Shinryu were unable to eliminate the Dragon King, for the sake of our lifeless immortal sect, we do not intend to continue fighting with the Dragon King. Wise. Li Yunxin nodded, but my confidence is inflated, and there is still the Grand Elder. What do you have to negotiate with me and ask me to let bygones be bygones? Ancestor said that the Dragon King indeed has the help of the Grand Elder. But we still have a formation in the vast sea. The eye of the formation should be familiar to the Dragon King. He saw it at the foot of Cloud Mountain. You mean the remains of the ancient demon? Qin Fengzi thought for a while as if listening to something. Then he said, Ancestor said that the Dragon King is only half right. The ones in the vast sea are different from those on land. They are not ancient demons but god fiends. We have already refined them for many years, and originally planned to finish them all in one go. But since the Dragon King took the demon's soul, the power of the god fiend has been reduced, but he still might not lose to the saint. Before Li Yunxin could say anything, he heard someone shouting in his ears, Bullshit! Where is he? I'll go meet him. Li Yunxin said, The Grand Elder said that your ancestor is bullshitting. Cold sweat appeared on Qin Fengzi's forehead. He shouted, Dragon King! You can't? He's listening to me now. Li Yunxin laughed. He can hear every word? Qin Fengzi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Yes, yes. Dragon King, Dragon King. Ancestor, please admire the courage of the Dragon King. Forget it. Li Yunxin waved his hand. It's just that I'm not easy to deal with and the Shinryu doesn't have much use for me, so they're trying to rope me in. Tell your ancestor, this is very common, I can accept it. The alliance of the strong will always be based on benefits. But you, are you planning to expand on land? What mystic gate? After a while, Qin Fengzi said, Yes. That's why there's no conflict with what the Dragon King wants to do in the sea. That's not enough. Li Yunxin pouted and pointed at his ear. The Grand Elder beside me, did you hear that? He's very interested in your demon god and is eager to try. It'll take me a lot of effort to convince him not to make a move. You can't just shake hands and make peace with me just because you say there's no conflict. I want something else. For example, we can send the Dragon King to Dragon Island. Qin Fengzi said, Right now the Dragon Island's door is under the control of the lifeless immortal sect. We know what the Dragon King wants and we don't want to cause a conflict. Dragon King can go through. Li Yunxin's eyes lit up and he finally laughed. Your ancestor is a sensible person. Then when do we go? Red Madam was listening to their conversation at the cave entrance. But at this time she walked to Li Yunxin's side and whispered, I'm afraid it's a trap. Li Yunxin didn't hide anything from Qin Fengzi. It's definitely a trap. But I do want to go to Dragon Island. And I think, he looked at Qin Fengzi, since they know what's happening on land and here they should be smart people. Knowing that I can live in peace with them is the best outcome. If they anger me it would be like poking a hornet's nest. After saying this he didn't look at Qin Fengzi anymore. Instead he looked to the east. Don't you think so? Qin Fengzi coughed again. He was stuck in a difficult situation. He had to be respectful to the 10,000-year-old ancestor, but he didn't dare to offend the Dragon King, so he could only say, The ancestor said that the Dragon King is also a smart person. Said. He paused and frowned slightly. Then he looked at Li Yunxin and said with some surprise, said, But before that I hope that the Dragon King can deal with those people from the west. That ghost army? Red Madam's face was also filled with surprise. Li Yunxin replied, Oh. They're talking about Brother Ji. He turned to Red Madam, that Li Kingdom's emperor. I asked him to come and help me. He is indeed a passionate person, he is a good friend. He then said to Qin Fengzi, Your sect doesn't need to worry about this. I have taken over such a big territory, I need someone to look after it. How about this? Penglai, Yingzhou, Fanghu and the other 3 islands are my territory. My brother Ji's ghost army will be stationed here from now on, they will not cross the border. If I am safe he will retreat after a few days. But if something happens to me he will cause trouble for your sect. Chapter 710. Qin Fengzi was silent for a while as if listening to the old ancestor. After a while he said, Then we need to keep an eye on that place as well. Li Yunxin shrugged, Up to you. Qin Fengzi became silent again. After about 3 or 4 breaths of time, the nervous and embarrassed expression on his face disappeared. Dragon King. He said in a low voice, You should reconsider. Li Yunxin looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. These are your words? The old ancestor is no longer here. Qin Fengzi sighed, These are my words. Then you're quite daring. You dared to say such words after staying here for a few days? Your old ancestor should kill you. I'm not afraid of the old ancestor finding out. Qin Fengzi said seriously, the old ancestor isn't someone who kills indiscriminately. Dragon King. I know you've seen many people. Cultivators, demons. I also know you don't have a good impression of them. But I'm from the Celestial Gate. Dragon King and Taoist masters I have interacted before, you should know we're different from them. Qin Fengzi sighed, we're humans. Ah. Li Yunxin laughed loudly, his laughter echoed in the stone hall. He pointed at Qin Fengzi and said to Red Madam, he said he's a human. Red Madam also frowned and looked at the lifeless immortal sect practitioner with interest. After looking for a while, she shook her head. He's a demon, not a human. Qin Fengzi sighed again, Dragon King knows what I mean. I'm indeed a demon. In the lifeless immortal sect, except for one human, everyone else is a demon. Demon, sea demon, water demon, whatever you want to call me. But the demons on the land and the Dragon King of the Nine Seas look down on humans. They think they're weak and ignorant creatures. However, even for them, they still had to transform into human form in the end. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that they'll behave like humans. They'll wear armor and learn the etiquette of humans. To tell the truth, I don't think there's anything shameful about having a human name. For a demon like me to say that I'm a human, Dragon King, you should know that I'm talking about a human's personality. The difference between us and land demons and sea demons is that we also understand good and evil, and we know how to restrain our thoughts. If you can use the thoughts of others to speculate about others, then you can also speculate about us. Red Madam looked at him in surprise. Li Yunxin frowned. What are you trying to say? The Dragon King should think about it again. Li Yunxin stared at him suspiciously. Isn't it good if I agree? Do you want me to refuse and start a war with you? If Dragon King was sincere, he wouldn't have agreed so easily. Qin Fengzi looked straight into Li Yunxin's eyes. Dragon King must have thought that this is a trap or a delaying tactic. But if he thinks about it, and talks to the ancestor, he'll find that the ancestor is sincere. The ancestor is different from the cultivators and demons that Dragon King has seen on land and on land. We don't have any conflict of interest with Dragon King on the ocean or on land. Everything we've said just now, we mean it. This person is interesting. Li Yunxin said to Red Madam, we actually met a reasonable demon on the ocean. Red Madam didn't say anything. She wondered if he was saying that she was being unreasonable. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. You said that there's a human in your lifeless immortal sect. Oh, it's the ancestor. Qin Fengzi said softly, we only feel that we're human because of the ancestor's teachings. Is he really a human? Li Yunxin frowned. He's called the ancestor for 10,000 years. Has he really lived for 10,000 years? It's 40,000 years. The ancestor has cultivated for 40,000 years. Qin Fengzi said in a low voice. I know what Dragon King is thinking. He thinks that the lifespan of a profound realm cultivator on land is only a few thousand years. No one has ever lived over 10,000 years. But it's precisely because of this that the ancestor's cultivation method is the orthodox profound sect. We don't go through any love tribulations and we don't kill indiscriminately. We have compassion for the people of the world. Even this dragon lady's monarch father, Shinryu, told the ancestor to kill him. The ancestor spared his life and took good care of him in the Ruashui River. He only told us to spread false information. In your place? Red Madam didn't care whether she was being reasonable or not. She stared at the ancestor. This caused a layer of killing intent to surface on her beautiful face. The fine dust on the stone hall's floor buzzed and flew into the air, as if a thin layer of mist had formed on the ground. Qin Fengzi gasped with difficulty. Don't be impatient. It's indeed in the Ruashui River. It's indeed fine. And the ancestor and I share the same interests. We often drink tea and talk about poetry. Otherwise I wouldn't dare to mention this. Then why don't you let him out? Red Madam looked at him angrily. You've put him under house arrest. The female demon's obsession was born again. Her robe and hair fluttered. I'll kill my way to your Ruashui River and save him. She reached out her hand to grab Qin Fengzi. Lead the way. At the same time, Qin Fengzi shouted, Dragon Lady, don't misunderstand. It's the Lord Dongting who doesn't want to leave. Red Madam's hand froze. It almost touched Qin Fengzi's collar. But the terrifying wind had already passed through her body. The necromancer in the place of the outer fringe took 2 steps back before stopping. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Doesn't want to leave? The demon power on Red Madam's body slowly dissipated. Her robe slowly became taut. She stared at Qin Fengzi. "What do you mean by doesn't want to leave?" Cough, he said, cough. Qin Fengzi said as he wiped his mouth. He wanted to wipe off the blood stain at the corner of his mouth. But how could he withstand the demon power that shot out from the fingertips of Dragon Lady, who was at the peak of the mystic realm? More and more blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Soon, his sleeves and front were soaked. In the end, he could not even cough. He could only grab his neck in pain. He stared at Li Yunxin with his bloodshot eyes. Li Yunxin shrugged. He took out a small jade bottle from his pinky. Then he took out a pill of creation from the jade bottle. In just a short while, Qin Fengzi's legs were already weak. He fell to the ground. Li Yunxin threw the pill into the air. He exerted force with his palm. The pill turned into mist in the air and blasted into Qin Fengzi's body. "Well, now everyone knows that I run a medicine shop. Now everyone knows that I run a pharmacy." He clapped his hands. "Why do I feel like I've saved a lot of people recently? For example, the one in front of me. He thought for a moment. Forget it. Anyway, I think there are a lot of people." But this awkward joke didn't attract the Banshee's attention. Red Lady was still staring at Qin Fengzi. "Say it." The pill of creation was just like its name. It was sent into his body by Li Yunxin with his demon power. It immediately showed amazing curative effect. Qin Fengzi's face turned pale. He was in pain a moment ago. But the next moment he felt so comfortable that he shivered. But he didn't forget how terrible the Banshee in front of him was. He shook his head gently and said, "Dragon Lady, wait a minute. Dragon Lady, don't panic. I will tell you in detail. I met the old Lord of Dongting once when he was tasting tea with the ancestor in the Ruoshui River. The ancestor asked him if he was used to this place. The Lord Dongting said this place was happy but not Chu. The Dongting on the land used to be called the land of Chu, right?" He finally took a breath. The ancestor asked him that it was boring to live in the Ruoshui River for a long time. It was not as prosperous as the land. He stayed in the Dongting for 2,000 years. Didn't he want to travel around? Qin Fengzi stood up, but the old lord of Dongting said that he only cared about Shinryu in the world. But now he knows that Shinryu is not the former Shinryu and he wants to kill him. It can be seen that the love is over. He has nothing to care about in the world. He just wants to roast a two-legged sheep. But it doesn't matter after thinking about it. In this case, it doesn't matter how prosperous the land is, it's better to stay in the Ruoshui River. After saying these words, Red Lady looked at her face. The Banshee was stunned. He muttered to himself, "There's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to worry about." These were his words. "If it's him?" Qin Fengzi seemed a little confused. "Yes." Then he looked at Li Yunxin. It seemed that he didn't know what he said wrong. But he found that Li Yunxin was also looking at him with interest. He suddenly froze and said hurriedly, This old lord means that now Dragon Lady is a rare powerhouse in the world, so there is no need to worry about Dragon Lady." Red Lady obviously didn't take his words to heart. She stood there for a while in a daze and then turned around without saying a word. She slowly walked to the entrance of the cave and sat down facing the ocean with her arms around her legs. Qin Fengzi looked at Li Yunxin awkwardly. "Dragon King, I didn't mean what I said. I didn't expect. It's not your fault." Li Yunxin looked at him with a faint smile and drawled, "It's just a small matter. You will always forget it." Qin Fengzi coughed again. Li Yunxin took 2 steps and shook his head. He didn't know why he smiled and said in a low voice, "It's hard to be a man." Qin Fengzi could only smile, but he didn't understand what he meant. If it was in the past. In Li Yunxin's previous world, when he was young, he also needed some time to understand. When he looked at Qin Fengzi just now, it was as if he was looking at his younger self. Those emotions that ordinary people didn't care about were instinctive to them. But to the Li Yunxin of that time, they were indescribably complicated things. Little by little he became aware of their existence, and then he committed them to memory. When interacting with others, one must carefully observe what emotions that person is revealing, and then find the corresponding emotion in one's own mind, so as to respond appropriately. But even someone as smart as him was often thought of as a monster or an imbecile. It would take a few more years before he could turn those instinctive feelings into his own habits, and it wouldn't be so strenuous anymore. But this Qin Fengzi previously said that he was a human. His words and actions were indeed like a human. For a moment, Li Yunxin even wondered if what he said made sense. But this little interlude made him realize that they were demons in the end. Red Lady, he didn't know if it was good or bad luck. became a ghost cultivator and had an obsession, so she placed a lot of importance on the word, emotions. She placed a lot of importance on herself and her father. But when Qin Fengzi mentioned the matter of Lord Dongting, perhaps because of the sudden change in his emotions, he forgot one thing. This red lady was Lord Dongting's daughter. Lord Dongting said that he no longer had anything to worry about in this world, he only cared about a two-legged lamb roasted with stone. But his daughter couldn't compare to a dish made from human flesh. How could Red Lady not be sad? To a human, this was something that couldn't be ignored. But to a demon like Qin Fengzi, who considered himself a human, he had to be careful in his words in order to notice it. In this world, there probably wasn't a single human who could understand the demon's carelessness, like Li Yunxin. After all, they only had human skin but no heart. A few thoughts flashed in his mind. Li Yunxin sighed softly. "Where are you going?" Qin Fengzi looked at the entrance of the cave. "Ancestor ordered me to stay with Dragon King. Of course, if Dragon King doesn't allow it, yes. Stay here." Li Yunxin turned around and walked towards Red Lady. He stood behind Li Xinyu for a while. He saw her lowering her head. Her messy hair fluttered in the wind, but her whole body was motionless like a stone statue. He thought for a moment, then took a step forward and sat beside her. "Actually, don't talk." Red Lady whispered, "I don't want to hear anything you say now." Li Yunxin shrugged his shoulders. "I'm here to comfort you." "I know." Her voice was as light as the wind. "I'm also comforting myself. The reason why I'm still in this world is because of my obsession. If my obsession is gone, I'll be gone too. You still have important things to do and I have to take care of myself." Li Yunxin was stunned. After a while, he smiled helplessly. "I don't only want you to do things. But I don't know. I don't know. You came to comfort me. You." She took a deep breath. "You will make me happy. Everything you say is nice and I'll be happy when I hear it. But I'm afraid, before I know whether what you said is true or not, I won't care about it anymore. I'm afraid. I don't want you to comfort me now. You're angry." Li Yunxin smiled and said, "But you shouldn't be afraid of believing in me. In this world, how many things can be seen to be true? But even if it is seen to be true, it may not be true inside. For example, two old friends meet and entrust their lives to each other. One person sacrificed his life for the other and finally died. People die for the sake of loyalty. But when he died, maybe he was still thinking about his wife and children and worried about them. Then he thought how good it would be if he didn't agree to this. But then he thought that since he made a promise, how could he break it? So, with a conflicted heart, perhaps even vexed and remorseful, in the end he still did something spectacular. Was it true or false?" Li Yunxin rubbed his hands and looked into the distance with her. He let out a sigh. "So most of the things I do, I only care about the result. Some people care about the process and enjoy the process. But I'm a utilitarian person. I only care about the result. If there is no result, everything is in vain. This idea may be wrong, but I'm used to it." "But you care too much about the process." Li Yunxin turned to look at her. "But the things you pursue with your obsession, you can only enjoy the process. Then, in that case, we only care about the process. What happens today may change tomorrow. The world that is still fine now may be destroyed tomorrow. In such a world we should enjoy ourselves and please ourselves. Isn't that a wise thing to do?" "So I think," Li Yunxin's words were interrupted. He suddenly widened his eyes, his body was petrified and he gritted his teeth. Red Madam suddenly turned her face around and her lips touched his mouth for a moment before parting again. There were warm tears on her face, but they also stuck to Li Yunxin's face. He soon felt the coolness. The female monster was stunned together with him. It was as if she didn't know what force drove her to do this. She reacted before Li Yunxin. She quickly stood up and took 3 steps back like a frightened deer. It was as if she didn't suddenly kiss Li Yunxin, but he did it first. Her chest was heaving up and down. In fact, she didn't need to breathe at all. She stared at Li Yunxin. You said to enjoy yourself." Li Yunxin was stunned for another 2 breaths, then he pursed his lips. His expression quickly calmed down and he stood up. "That's what I said." He smiled and coughed softly. "Carpe diem. Well, it's also a positive attitude towards life." He looked around and saw Qin Fengzi. He frowned. "Why are you still here? Didn't I tell you to leave?" Qin Fengzi's eyes widened. He pointed at himself and said blankly, "Me? Didn't Dragon King tell me to stay here?" "Stay here?" Li Yunxin stared at him. "You used one of my nature pills and you want to stay here? I told you to go catch fish. Catch fish and shrimp." There are still many treasures on the demon soldiers under the sea. Go and work. Qin Fengzi hurriedly raised his hand. Okay, Dragon King, don't be angry. I'll go now. Before he finished his sentence, he had already turned into a beam of light and left. The stone hall became quiet again. Li Yunxin paced a few steps, then looked at Red Lady and spread his hands. You see, it's really hard to communicate with this person. Red Madam tucked the hair on the side of her face behind her ears and stood looking at him. Li Yunxin looked up and sized up the stone hall again. It's not good to keep it empty. You've been in Ziwei Hall on Mount June for a long time. I think that place is not bad. Why don't you decorate this place like that? If Brother Ji comes, it will match his status. He used to be an emperor, haha. An emperor is very particular. Maybe not as particular as before, but he is still particular. He is a guest from afar, right? When I saw him a few days ago, it took me a lot of effort. I won't do that in the future. Red Lady wrung her hands. If you don't like it. Li Yunxin tilted his head and spread his hands. Then you want to use bright yellow? Yes. No, the Li Kingdom still prefers black. Li Yunxin said, black is fine too. Black is like a devil's den. Li Yunxin blinked his eyes, then, white. The Qin Kingdom still prefers white. Well, a guest should follow the host's wishes. All right then. Red Madam laughed. Do you want to dig a few more guest rooms? Yes, as you wish. Chapter 7:11. Qin Fengzi was given the task of picking up trash by Li Yunxin. But he was quite happy doing it. At least he didn't have to face two unpredictable great demons, and he could temporarily escape from the center of the whirlpool. Before this, regardless of when he realized it, he was always at the center of a huge whirlpool. Li Yunxin was originally an unimportant part of the lifeless immortal sect's grand plan. But with his shocking courage and intelligence, he became someone that couldn't be ignored. The Seven Seas Dragon King died in his hands, and now he has the help of a Grand Elder. Now the most eye-catching person in the Nine Seas is no longer Shinryu, but him. But it seems like he likes this feeling a lot. What kind of person is afraid that he doesn't have enough trouble and desperately tries to take it on himself? Doesn't he know that the more he takes from others, the heavier the price he will have to pay in the future? Unless he can be the final winner. Thinking of this, Qin Fengzi sighed underwater. He took out a dagger from the dead demon general and put it in his sleeves. Li Yunxin definitely didn't want him to pick up trash. He just wanted him to leave the stone temple temporarily. There were many love affairs between demons, and he himself had experienced it a few times. But because the union between demons of different races could kill a female demon, most demons would use some magical powers when they couldn't find a partner of the same race. There were many ways to experience the joy of love between a man and a woman, without the last step of contact, some of which were even more exciting than true love. But looking at Li Yunxin and the Dragon Lady, Qin Fengzi felt that they weren't having fun. At least the female didn't. But according to Li Yunxin himself, he couldn't even be considered a dragon. What kind of result could he have with this female demon? Qin Fengzi sighed again and flew up to the surface of the sea. Just like he said, the demons of the lifeless immortal sect all thought of themselves as humans. So they liked the surface of the sea more than normal sea demons. He stood still in the air and looked at the direction of the stone mountain. From here, the stone mountain was just a small dot. It stood black on the surface of the water. Li Yunxin used the fortune pill to save his life. But something like the nature pill, he had heard the ancestor mention it before, was not as simple as saving a life. Not only did Li Yunxin's palm save his body, but it also boosted his cultivation to the peak of the transcendent state. At this moment, his heart was filled with conflicting emotions. Li Yunxin was definitely not a match for the immortal sect. If he overestimated himself and wanted to become an enemy, only death awaited him. But he was so smart that he was at a disadvantage in the current situation. Every single word he said in the stone hall was sincere. He believed that the elder ancestor was indeed doing this out of goodwill, at least it wasn't malicious. However, that Li Yunxin was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. He wasn't willing to believe any friendly suggestions. Qin Fengzi didn't want to see the scene of him dying. These days of interaction made him realize that this Lu Ku had an admirable side to him, even if it was often expressed in a more extreme way. So he really wanted to use some method to make him understand the immortal sect's goodwill. To make him understand that he and the others were completely different from those cultivators and road demons. The immortal sect needed this kind of talent, not this kind of enemy, Qin Fengzi stood on the surface of the ocean and thought for a while before turning his gaze to the south. That was the direction of the vast ocean. In the vast ocean, there was a formation that the immortal sect had operated for tens of thousands of years. Most of the thoughts he had just now were from his heart. It was rare to see someone as outstanding as Li Yunxin. He didn't like to see him die. But if he stood on the immortal sect's side and thought rationally, even if Li Yunxin took a step back and didn't want to go against the immortal sect, he wouldn't be able to leave in the end. He was favored by the elder ancestor, so he knew many secrets. This included the details of the battle on the Cloud Mountain. In the Cloud Mountain, Li Yunxin used some unknown and terrifying method to severely injure two ancient devils, and even defeated powerful demons like the Zither Lord and the Tao Lord. At that time, he wasn't even in the profound realm. And in the ocean he destroyed the vast army of the Dragon King in one fell swoop. Originally, the immortal sect planned to spend a lot of effort to achieve such an outcome. This meant that he knew a secret that could make him stronger, so he had the confidence to ignore the elder ancestor's goodwill. This secret should have come from the Cloud Mountain of the profound sect. The elder ancestor might also know some inside information. Because of this, how could they be at ease with Li Yunxin, who had such great power? If he was an ordinary powerful demon, he might really be able to protect himself. But now, for someone like the elder ancestor, there should only be two choices: help or enemy. Right now, the elder ancestor wanted him to be a helper. That way both sides could benefit and avoid losses. But with Li Yunxin's personality, it would probably be very difficult to achieve this goal. It would take a long time and effort. Qin Fengzi felt that he might have the patience. But he wasn't sure if the elder ancestor would still have the patience after so many rejections. The elder ancestor must be getting stronger and stronger. Because at least a year ago he seemed to be unable to use the divine ability just now, to directly transmit his thoughts to the elder ancestor's mind through divine sense in the Ruoshui, which was extremely far away. Previously in the stone hall, Li Yunxin didn't want to talk to the elder ancestor through him. Actually, Qin Fengzi also wanted to make this happen. He wanted to see the elder ancestor and know what kind of person the elder ancestor was. But the elder ancestor didn't give him any specific words, but only thoughts and thoughts. He still needed to organize those thoughts into words and convey them. He could only hate his clumsiness in speaking and not being able to convince Li Yunxin. Qin Fengzi sighed again and prepared to dive into the water again. But at this moment he suddenly felt that his body wasn't listening to him. A sense of crisis arose, but there was nothing he could do. He could only hear the sound of wind whistling in his ears. His body was grabbed by some kind of power and he quickly retreated. In just a dozen breaths of time he could no longer see the stone mountain behind the sea. After a few more breaths of time, his body finally stopped and sank into the sea. He felt a powerful demonic power. This kind of power made him apprehensive. This is similar to the power of the Dragon Lady. Is it a demon from the sea? Or is it the remnant of the Seven Seas Dragon King? But the voice that sounded in his ears quickly stopped him from making unnecessary guesses. What is Li Yunxin doing now? Who is he with? What's going on with that Grand Elder? Speak. This was a female voice. It sounded very calm and composed, but there was a hint of anxiety and hostility in her words. The person who spoke appeared in front of him. It was a woman. She was beautiful, wearing a large cloak, and her black hair was simply combed. But the aura on her body revealed her identity: a land demon. A female demon at the peak of the profound realm. Qin Fengzi guessed her identity and quickly calmed down. You are Zither Monarch Qionyou. Speak. The person didn't seem to want to waste any time. But after experiencing the baptism of Li Yunxin, Red Lady, and being surrounded by the 150,000 sea demon army, Qin Fengzi's state of mind was no longer the same as before. Although he was nothing more than an ant in the eyes of a demon of the Zither Monarch's level, his tone was calm and without the slightest hint of panic. Since this Zither Monarch was like this, Qin Fengzi didn't waste any more words. Zither Monarch, Li Yunxin is with Red Lady now. As for that Grand Elder, I don't know what's going on. I am his captive. Since you are a captive, why didn't you escape just now? Just like now. In front of a powerhouse like Zither Monarch, how would I dare to escape? I can't escape. Qin Fengzi spoke faster, afraid that he would be killed before he could finish his sentence. I am from the lifeless immortal sect. At first we were also fighting against Li Yunxin. Zither Monarch looked at him expressionlessly. That Grand Elder is Li Yunxin? A helper that he called. A helper that he called. A helper that he called. Qin Fengzi said. He called them using a formation. Zither Monarch didn't say anything and looked at him again, as if she was wondering if he was telling the truth. Qin Fengzi let out a sigh. Everything I said is true. I have seen the power of a profound realm powerhouse. I know that lying will only get me killed. Zither Monarch is wise. After a while. What is he going to do next? He is going to Dragon Island. To look for Shinryu. Zither Monarch's expression loosened a bit. She seemed to be satisfied with this answer. Qin Fengzi's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't possibly know what Li Yunxin was going to do next. Thus, this loosening couldn't be because she confirmed that she wasn't lying. Perhaps she was happy because she heard that Li Yunxin was going to look for Shinryu? One must know that the current dragon son on the continent doesn't have a good impression of the Lord Shinryu either. But, that's not right either. From this Zither Monarch's tone, it seems that she hates Li Yunxin more than Shinryu. It shouldn't be this slightly relieved reaction. She should be gloating or showing disgust for both. At this moment, Qin Fengzi's mind was working very fast. Because this Zither Monarch didn't seem to be as easy to talk to as Li Yunxin. If he wanted to live, he had to be smart. But before he could think of anything, Zither Monarch asked again, "Are you a sea demon?" "Yes." "Then do you know how to get to Dragon Island?" A thought suddenly flashed across his mind. Qin Fengzi made a bold conjecture. Perhaps the first thought that he denied was true. This Zither Monarch was indeed relieved because she confirmed that Li Yunxin was going to look for Shinryu. This meant that she knew about this beforehand, but not from Li Yunxin. Then, it's Shinryu? That makes sense. Shinryu first pretended to cooperate with Li Yunxin, then cooperated with the Gate of Heaven. But Li Yunxin's methods were too clever. He didn't fight with the Dragon King of the Ninth Sea, nor did he fight with the Gate of Heaven. The biggest winner now was Li Yunxin and the Gate of Heaven. Shinryu would definitely be worried. Then, was he planning to make use of this Zither Monarch? Promised her some benefits and asked her to help him. But this Zither Monarch didn't know if Shinryu's dangerous situation was real or not. Now that she had confirmed it, she sighed in relief, thinking that Shinryu's words were true. The reason why she asked him how to get to Dragon Island was because the gate of Dragon Island was occupied by the Gate of Heaven, so she couldn't just walk in. Although this conjecture was only one of the many possibilities, Qin Fengzi felt that it was the closest to the truth. He realized that this was a good opportunity. If he wanted to build a good relationship with Li Yunxin, the best way was to bind him with benefits. He had to get out of here alive and send this news back. With that in mind, he thought again and said, "Zither Monarch is also planning to look for Shinryu. If that's the case, I have a suggestion." But Zither Monarch's expression suddenly changed. Qin Fengzi's hair stood on end. He was afraid that this demon suddenly wanted to kill him because of something he said or thought. But how could he escape with his current cultivation? He immediately shouted in his heart, "I'm done for." But in the next moment there was a burst of water, and Zither Monarch was already gone. Qin Fengzi was stunned. He didn't know what she was doing, but then he saw in the distance where the sea and the sky met, a black line appeared. That wasn't a wave. The moment the black line appeared, Qin Fengzi immediately felt a bone-chilling cold. The sunlight in the sky seemed to have dimmed, and the sun was hanging low. He quickly realized that it wasn't an illusion. A black aura shot up into the sky, like a dark cloud rolling towards him. That was eerie ghost aura. Only a few 100,000 souls could have such an aura, and they had to be evil ghosts with heavy grievances. This scene stunned Qin Fengzi for a moment. The sea, where did so many souls come from? Just at this moment he saw a black light piercing through the air, and with a buzz, it passed by him. The waves it set off sent him flying tens of feet away, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. As soon as he stabilized himself on the sea, he complained in his heart, "What day is today? Another profound realm peak." The black light chased in the direction that Zither Monarch had escaped to, and as it chased, it shouted like thunder, "Ha! Little beauty! I've been looking for you for so long." Qin Fengzi was dumbfounded. But it only lasted for 3 breaths. Zither Monarch ran very fast. The black light couldn't catch up to her, so it quickly turned back and appeared in front of him. It was a man, a very muscular man. He wore a black robe embroidered with golden threads. On his head was a crown with 5 dragons, and he looked like an emperor of the world. Qin Fengzi opened his mouth. "Emperor? Li. A man who came from the land, a profound realm peak, and dressed like this. If it wasn't Emperor Li who became a ghost emperor after his death, who else could it be?" Emperor Li glared at him, and his eyes shone like lanterns, and he said in a rough voice, "Huh? Damn, there's someone on the sea who knows me? Let me ask you, what did that little beauty say to you?" Tell me quickly and I'll take you as a ghost general. Chapter 7:12. Qin Jun had just left and now Emperor Li was here. He wanted to make him a ghost general. Qin Fengzi felt that even if he had 9 lives he would still have to be extremely careful and not make any mistakes. He said hurriedly, "Ghost Emperor, wait. I am one of Dragon King's men." "Ah, one of Li Yunxin's men." The army from the east mentioned by the great ancestor in his divine sense must be the ghost army led by Emperor Li. But Qin Fengzi had never thought that there would be so many, hundreds of thousands of vengeful ghosts. If all these souls were used to fill the vast sea formation. But the look in Emperor Li's eyes made him give up the idea. The ghost emperor stared at him. "You are one of his men?" Qin Fengzi said hurriedly, Yes, your majesty is his friend." But at this point his voice gradually became softer. Because he was watching Emperor Li's face as he spoke. But now he found that something was wrong. This ghost emperor at the peak of profound realm, after hearing that he was one of Li Yunxin's men, didn't relax. Instead, anger and resentment gathered on his face. "Great." The ghost emperor lifted him up in the air. "I am going to get even with that guy. You are also one of his men." Good. "Where is he?" Qin Fengzi was dumbfounded. Didn't they say that this was Li Yunxin's reinforcements? And Li Yunxin called him Brother Ji in the Stone Palace. At this moment, the rolling black line at the intersection of the sea and the sky finally rushed over. Even a cultivator like Qin Fengzi couldn't help but gasp when he saw the scene around him. They were all huge ghosts with green faces and fangs, more than 10 feet tall. They still had the appearance before they died, missing arms and legs, and some only had half of their heads left. However, the ghostly aura around them was so strong that there was a howling wind under the sun. The leader seemed to be a ghost emperor. His cultivation was lower than Emperor Li's, but he was also wearing a crown. Qin Fengzi heard that Emperor Li also had a Yi emperor. He guessed that this was him. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the ghost army that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had already surrounded him. The sky seemed to darken in an instant. He felt as if his body was being pricked by needles and cold as if he had been stripped naked and thrown into the snow. This kind of surging ghostly aura. If a mortal were to see it from afar he would probably lose his life. Emperor Li saw Emperor Yi and shouted, "Brother Lu, look! He caught that kid's man. Ask him to take us to him." As soon as he said this, the Yin soldiers around him immediately began to howl like ghosts and wolves. Emperor Yi didn't look at Qin Fengzi and just sighed, "Brother Ji, I think? Maybe he has his reasons." He must have said the same thing many times. Emperor Li frowned and said, "Do you have any difficulties? I'll ask him face to face. Where is Li Yunxin?" Emperor Yi looked at Qin Fengzi. "If you are really his man, then say it. Don't die for nothing. We went to find Li Yunxin because of a misunderstanding." Emperor Li snorted coldly. When he faced Qin Jun. In order to save his life, Qin Fengzi told him everything he knew. Facing these two ghost emperors there was nothing he could do. If he didn't say it they would find a way to get information out of him. And, at least they didn't hate Li Yunxin as much as Qin Jun. This Li Yunxin. How did he end up like this? He didn't have any friends, they were all enemies. He could only sigh in his heart. "Your Majesties, please listen to me." Li Yunxin had a lot of treasures on him. They weren't limited to divine weapons and armors. Some of them could be used indoors. For example, some tables and chairs. They were originally used in Xuanmen's sacrificial ceremonies. It was extremely gorgeous, wishing that every crevice could be inlaid with sparkling gems. These items, along with other items like blankets with other magical functions, were placed in the hall of the stone temple, immediately changing the appearance of the originally empty temple. But under the illumination of the luminous pearls, although the hall was luxurious, it was too luxurious. It showed a vulgar and extravagant aura. But Li Yunxin looked at the cave entrance and clapped his hands in satisfaction. Wonderful. If someone were to accidentally see this mountain in the future and climb up, they would definitely know that this is an immortal's abode and not some devil's den. But Red Lady wasn't satisfied with the scene in front of her. She originally wanted to use some stone tables and chairs to make it look more ethereal. But according to Li Yunxin, Emperor Li used to be an emperor. Don't all emperors like shiny, glittering things? That was the right thing to do. But Red Lady was slightly puzzled by his enthusiasm. Li Yunxin had always been a person who did things his own way. It was rare for him to be so concerned about someone's feelings. It seemed that he was overly solicitous, to him. This doubt lingered in her heart for a long time. but because of the great joy in her heart, she temporarily put it behind her mind. This was the cave that she and Li Yunxin had arranged together. However, this feeling of joy didn't last long. She heard a roar coming from the distant ocean. Li Yunxin, come out. Then a black line appeared at the junction of the sea and the sky. Black clouds rolled over. Red Lady's face turned cold. Lifeless immortal sect? It's Brother Ji. Li Yunxin was originally standing against the stone cave. Hearing this, he laughed. You came at the right time. You sound energetic. It seems that you didn't encounter any difficulties on the way. Emperor Li? Red Lady turned to look at him. Why is it? A little misunderstanding, Li Yunxin said with a smile. Let's talk. As he spoke, he stood up and shouted, Brother Ji, Brother Lu, you must have had a hard time. I have prepared some wine. As he spoke, he took out a jade pot from his sleeve. With a flick of his finger, a stream of seawater flowed into the pot. He threw the pot to the table and it landed steadily. Delicacies? Then he dug out a few stones from the cave wall beside him. With a twist of his finger, he cast a camouflage spell and threw them to the table, turning them into delicacies. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for you to come and talk about the old days. Red Lady looked at him in confusion. Shouldn't Emperor Li be a helper? But looking at the momentum in the distance, it was similar to the army of the Seven Seas Dragon King. Emperor Li didn't answer Li Yunxin's words. On the other hand, the ghost army surrounded the stone mountain from a distance like a vast army. Then, a beam of black light with a frightening momentum broke through the air and stopped at the entrance of the cave. The ghost emperor showed up and frowned. His gaze first swept across Red Lady's body, and then fell on Li Yunxin. Good boy. Talk about the old days? Talk about what? The last time we talked about the old days, you took my people away. Now you have found a little girl and are having a good time on the sea. Red Lady stared at him. But she didn't know whether to be happy or angry. She looked at Li Yunxin and asked, Yunxin, this is... Li Yunxin smiled and waved his hand. Alas, it's just a misunderstanding. It's like this, a few days ago I died and went back to Yunshan. After that, I went to Brother Ji's place and wanted to ask him to help me on the sea. I said I won't help you. Emperor Li stared at him fiercely. I told you at that time. I don't like this desolate place. You almost had no demon power at that time and I could blow you up with one palm. But how did I do it? How did I treat you? Li Yunxin bowed deeply and bowed to him. She said with a smile, Brother Ji is really loyal. Instead, he wanted me to run the ghost kingdom with him. Of course I refused. But Brother Ji didn't say anything and didn't take advantage of me. Instead, he gave me tens of thousands of demon souls, transferred demon power to me and sent me away. Emperor Li was so angry that he shouted, Ah! What did you do after that? What did you do? The black wind around him was swaying. Obviously he was so angry that he was about to fight. Red Lady stared at him. The ghost emperor felt her gaze, so he only stared back at her. But he didn't do anything. As for me... Li Yunxin also glanced at Red Lady. As a result, I turned around and went to find Zither Lady, who was imprisoned by Brother Ji. I also gave all the demon power and demon souls that Brother Ji transferred to me to Zither Lady and saved her. I also said that I wanted to forget about the past and ask her to help me. Of course, Zither Lady refused. So I ran away. Then Zither Lady got out and wanted to take revenge on me. So she came to the sea. Emperor Li pointed at Li Yunxin's nose and scolded, Damn it, I was kind enough to heal you and send you away. But you took my woman away. Now you admit it. What else is there to say? Red Lady pursed her lips. She believed that it was Li Yunxin who did it. It was in line with his usual wicked style. But even if it was true, what else can you say? She also stared at Emperor Li. If you want justice, you have to go through me first. Emperor Li was furious. Li Yunxin stepped forward and stood between them. He sighed and looked at Emperor Li. Brother Ji, it doesn't matter if it's the truth. It doesn't matter if they were truth, but now you are here, and have seen the ocean with your own eyes. Don't you realize that I deliberately released Zither Lady and lured her to the ocean so that Brother Ji would come after her? I did all of this for you, brother. Emperor Li spat and said, I'm tired of you long ago. Li Yunxin spread his hands and stared at him. After a while he sighed again and said, I mean, like I said last time, the ocean is vast, and it's a good place for you to show your talent. Last time, when I invited you here, you said that the future of this place wasn't bright yet, and that you had to wait until I finished what I wanted to do. But I know what you were thinking. You felt that the world is in chaos now and millions of dead souls are wandering around. You don't want to leave such a precious place, so you don't want to come to the ocean with me, do you? But now, I've finished what I wanted to do. I have half of the ninth ocean in my hands. This half of the ninth ocean is almost half the size of Midland. Brother, you're already here. Are you still going to refuse? Chapter 7:13. Red Lady raised her eyebrows. You asked him to come? I asked him to come and rule the ocean with me. Li Yunxin said helplessly, but he didn't want to leave so many people and souls on the land, so he refused to come. So I had to ask Qin Jun to come, and then ask her to bring him here. Otherwise, how could I ask such a god to come? Emperor Li was stunned. It seemed that he was so angry that he didn't think of this. Only now did he realize it. But after a while he said angrily, you also know that I want the souls? Are there people on the sea? I don't care about the souls of monsters, I want the souls of the people. The souls of the people. You have so many ideas. Who knows what you are thinking? Give the ocean to me? I don't believe it. Although he was still angry. But both Li Yunxin and Red Lady could see that he was not as angry as before. Li Yunxin laughed again. What's there to not believe? Who else can I give it to if not you? He withdrew his smile and said sincerely, I'll go to my brother's place to ask for help with my heavily injured body. You didn't take advantage of me, so I know that you are a trustworthy person. In that case, my friend should know that I am an expert in scheming. But I am not as good at ruling a land, managing many things and controlling subordinates. You used to be an emperor. And you were the emperor of the Li Kingdom, which has the widest territory and the most powerful national power in the world. Who else can be better than you in this world? So, if I don't entrust this ocean to you, who else can I entrust it to? Humph. That is the truth. A triumphant smile flashed across Emperor Li's face. Obviously, Li Yunxin's flattery made him feel quite comfortable. But then he frowned. But I said I want the souls of the people. Li Yunxin said patiently, Brother, you have become a ghost cultivator and have your own obsession. It is normal that you can't figure it out. Then let me help you figure it out. Why do you want the souls of the people? To build a ghost kingdom in the human world. I told you when we were in Manwan Mountain. Ghost kingdom. Ghost kingdom. Ghost kingdom. But what's the point of building a ghost kingdom in the human world? Emperor Li stared at him, thinking that he was talking nonsense. Didn't I tell you? I will be the master of the ghost kingdom. From now on, all the dead souls in the world will come to my ghost kingdom. Those who did good deeds when they were alive will become my soldiers, and those who did evil deeds when they were alive will suffer. So you see, we did talk about it before. Li Yunxin clapped his hands. I thought so too. It would be great if there was a king of hell on earth. Black Bai Yanjun lived in seclusion. There was no such thing as retribution in the world. Evil people did bad things but no one punished them, and good people did good things but no one rewarded them. How could this be? But you're ahead of me, so I'll support you. But Brother G, since that's the case, are you building a ghost kingdom for the sake of building it or for the sake of karma in this world? If it's for the karma of the world, then what is the karma for? Of course it's for... Emperor Li widened his eyes and was stunned. For a moment he seemed to have turned into a stone statue or a shadow. As if he was independent of the world. Red Lady knew what this meant. Emperor Li became a ghost cultivator from a human being, and Red Lady became a ghost cultivator from a demon. But the essence of the two was similar. The existence of ghost cultivators was built on their obsessions. Obviously, this question of Li Yunxin touched on the root of Emperor Li's existence in the world. His obsessions. You said it was for a wider territory. Li Yunxin said seriously, but when you became an emperor, putting aside the fate and origin that you had to accept, why did you do it? In essence, isn't it for your country's people? Now you're dead and you're unwilling, so it became an obsessions. Brother, your obsessions are not for the ghost kingdom, but for the prosperity and justice of the human world. If this is the fundamental purpose of your existence, does it matter if you're a human soul or not, or how many human souls there are? There are far more creatures in the ocean than on the land, more than trillions. If you build your ghost kingdom here, it won't disturb the creatures like on the land. Isn't it a win-win situation? Emperor Li was stunned for a while, and his anger subsided a little. But he raised his eyebrows and said, You know my obsessions better than me? I didn't know it before. But I knew it when I saw what you did. Li Yunxin laughed. You gathered a group of ghosts, but you didn't go there to claim supremacy. Instead, you hid in a small temple in Manwan Mountain. What else can you do? Brother, the onlooker sees more clearly. Emperor Li stared at him angrily. After staring at him for a full 3 breaths, he was discouraged. You have a sharp tongue, I can't win against you. But no matter what, you have to bring her back to me. Well said, well said. Li Yunxin crossed his hands. I guess your beauty is somewhere waiting for you to catch her. But then again, brother, didn't you say that Guqin Jun? Emperor Li stared at him again. Didn't you tell me about soul mates? I thought about it for a few days and I think it makes sense. What, did you lie to me back then? Of course not. Li Yunxin dragged his voice. Brother, now you have a good career and a good love life. Come, let me drink with you. Where's Brother Lu? Where's he? Qin Fengzi, who was in the ghost army, was worried about whether he would die today. When he saw Li Yunxin, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was shocked. Just a quarter of an hour ago, Emperor Li was still aggressive, as if he would fight to the death with Li Yunxin. But now, when Qin Fengzi was brought into the cave by Emperor Yi, he realized that Emperor Yi was drinking wine with Emperor Li. What happened in such a short time? Emperor Yi threw him at the cave entrance and walked towards the table with large strides. Li Yunxin stood up and greeted them. He sat down and toasted them as if they were old friends. Red Madam was sitting beside Li Yunxin. She was a dragon girl at the peak of the profound realm who had almost killed him with her palm strike. Now she looked gentle and docile as if she was a bride. Qin Fengzi rubbed his eyes. He felt that he was hallucinating. Then he felt numb all over his body. Oh my God. Now in this stone hall, there were 2 at the peak of profound realm, 1 at the Grand Elder and 1 at the peak of true realm. Needless to say, there was also Li Yunxin. Even if the immortals held a meeting, it would be like this. He didn't dare to get close to such a scene. Looking around, he decided to leave the cave and find a place to hide for the time being. But Li Yunxin raised her hand and called out to him, I say, you come too, drink a few cups and eat a little. Did you see Guqin Jun? What did she say? Qin Fengzi forced himself to smile. But he felt it was more like crying. He walked over slowly. After declining again and again, he sat beside Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin poured him a cup of wine. He didn't dare to say anything. He took it with both hands and drank it in one gulp. Then he pinched his thigh to stop himself from spitting it out. The wine smelled like the sea. Emperor Li and Emperor Yi laughed when they saw him like this. Qin Fengzi also laughed. Then he said to Li Yunxin, This? Dragon King, it's like this. Thus he told the whole story in full detail. Li Yunxin listened and didn't say anything. He seemed to be thinking. Emperor Li was talking to Emperor Yi about things like, what should we do in the future on this ocean? Qin Fengzi sat on the stool with his hands on his legs. He didn't dare to move or make a sound. He could only listen quietly. After a while, he realized what the 2 ghost emperors were talking about. They seemed to be going to stay on the ocean. Before, Li Yunxin told his great ancestor that the ocean from the 3 islands to the east coast of the Midland would belong to him. Now he was giving the ocean to the 2 ghost emperors? He was stunned. It wasn't because Li Yunxin promised his great ancestor that the ghost army would retreat after this was over. It was because he just gave the territory away. He had seen many generous cultivators in the immortal sections. But none of them, not even himself, could do this. To give away something that he had exchanged his life for just like that. Was he really that generous? But after a moment of surprise, he realized something. If he could exchange this ocean for help like the 2 ghost emperors, it would be a good deal. Conquering and ruling were 2 different concepts. Li Yunxin had the ability to conquer this world, but it would be difficult to rule it. This water used to belong to the 3 seas. But under the rule of the 3 Dragon King, they were already troubled. Needless to say, after the Great War, many monster kings would be even more unsettled. By giving away such a body of water, he got himself out of trouble and got a great favor out of it. Maybe many people had this kind of foresight. But most people couldn't be as carefree as him. He didn't even have a trace of greed. He was as calm as a block of ice. He took a light breath and looked at Li Yunxin. In the end, she met his gaze. You're right. Li Yunxin nodded slightly. You're a smart person. Qin Fengzi was shocked and almost jumped up. He thought that Li Yunxin had guessed what he was thinking. But he quickly realized that Li Yunxin was referring to Qin Fengzi's analysis of Qin Fengzi. Qin Fengzi's reaction when he found out that Li Yunxin was going to find trouble with Shinryu. When I let her go, I hinted to her that I had a falling out with Shinryu. Li Yunxin said in a low voice as he swirled the wine glass in his hand. The moment he spoke, the 2 ghost emperors quieted down and listened to him. Qin Fengzi doesn't like Shinryu, but she hates me even more. Now that she knows about this, she's going to find out if what I said was true. If Shinryu wants to deal with me and if Shinryu has lost control. Then when she saw the vast army she should know that I'm telling the truth. She doesn't have any power now. All the land monsters hate her. If she wants to take revenge on me she must find someone to rely on. Now that Shinryu's plan has failed, she wants to find someone else to help her. Qin Fengzi has no power left, so she wants to find someone else to rely on. Chapter 7:14. Li Yunxin smiled. Her reaction might be because Shinryu had found her. After hearing what you said, she realized that Shinryu and I were enemies. She was relieved to know that she could cooperate with Shinryu. He turned to look at Emperor Li and said, "Brother Ji, am I right? That beauty of yours is somewhere waiting for us to catch her." Emperor Li was overjoyed and chuckled. But Red Lady frowned. Yunexian, if I were Guqin I wouldn't do that. Cooperating with Shinryu is like asking a tiger for its skin. It won't end well. She should know. You're right. Li Yunxin smiled. But I think Guqin is an exception. Because, do you know where the other half of Zither Monarch's demon soul comes from? Red Lady was stunned. I don't know. My husband. Her eyes dimmed. I don't know. Yeah. Li Yunxin turned to look at Qin Fengzi. Let's eat. Don't be shy. There's no hierarchy at the table. We're all friends. You eat. Qin Fengzi had been hungry for a long time. He finally got a fish. But after a few mouthfuls Red Lady hit him so hard that he vomited blood. He didn't have any food left in his stomach. Seeing the delicious food on the table, he was hungry. But the four of them didn't seem to have any appetite. He didn't dare to pick up his chopsticks. Now Li Yunxin urged him to eat while talking about business. Only then did he dare to touch the ivory chopsticks. But when he took the chopsticks, he found the four of them were looking at him strangely. His scalp was numb. He didn't know whether to eat or not. After a while he made up his mind. He picked up a piece of scallion from a plate of sea cucumber and carefully put it into his mouth. He chewed. With a crunching sound, he had chewed a mouthful of stone. Emperor Li, Emperor Yi and Li Yunxin laughed. The table was filled with joy. Li Yunxin smiled and winked at Red Lady. Is it fun? Red Lady blinked her eyes. Finally he smiled as well. Qin Fengzi smiled. She covered her mouth with her hand and spat on her palm. Lowering his head to take a look, it was indeed a stone. When you enter the profound realm, you'll know that stones have a special flavor. Li Yunxin laughed again. Let's get down to business. No one knew where Zither Lady's other half came from. Let's not talk about this for now. But there's one more thing. That day at the foot of the Cloud Mountain I killed hatred and injured the Tao Lord. Then Shinryu appeared. What did she say? She said that Zither Lady and Lord Tong Tian caused the trouble and the mastermind was hatred of Lord Tong Tian. Zither Lady Qianyo was bewitched by him and didn't pursue the matter further. How could my second brother be so powerful? It can be seen that Shinryu is protecting Zither Lady for some reason. Zither Lady is a little special to her. Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed at the table. Because of these reasons I guess Shinryu will look for her at this time. If she is also aware of this certain reason, then she will also look for the true dragon. Emperor Li frowned and asked, Come to think of it, Brother Li, what is the reason? I don't know. Li Yunxin spread his hands. Why don't we guess together? If you can't figure it out, how can we guess? Emperor Li waved his hand. I won't guess. I'll listen to you. Okay. Li Yunxin smiled. Actually, I have an idea. But I won't say it now. I need to observe for a few more days. So, I need to trouble you with this. He looked at Qin Fengzi as he spoke. There were 4 immortals sitting at the table, but Li Yunxin said that he needed to trouble him. Qin Fengzi hurriedly said, I don't dare. You must have some way to contact your sibling in Penglai Island or somewhere else. Dragon King, I won't secretly. Then, when they tell you that Zither Lady went to Penglai and went to Dragon Island, you tell me. Dragon King? Qin Fengzi's face was filled with fear. I really don't. Don't worry, brother. Li Yunxin patted his shoulder. It was as if he was drunk, becoming intimate and easygoing. I'm not testing you nor am I plotting against you. You said that you can send me to Dragon Island, but I'm not in a hurry. I need to know whether Zither Lady went there or not. You will stay with me for the next few days. You can use any method to contact your sibling. Right now we are in a truce. Yes or no? Qin Fengzi checked Li Yunxin's expression again and again. He realized that Li Yunxin was saying this casually and seriously. He could only stare blankly and agree. As soon as he got closer to Li Yunxin he felt like he was being played. Li Yunxin's thoughts were too hard to guess, almost untraceable. He had already given up on guessing his thoughts. He could only deal with it as it comes. For example, the Gate of Heaven was indeed an ally of Shinryu in name. If Shinryu wanted to summon Zither Lady to Dragon Island, they would have to go through the 3 islands and let the Gate of Heaven know. And he could get the news through his sibling. But what was the certain reason that Li Yunxin mentioned? No matter what the reason was, he seemed to be very confident. He told Emperor Li that his people would go to Dragon Island and wait for them to catch them. It seemed that Shinryu and Zither Lady were already trapped. When they were surrounded by the vast army, Li Yunxin showed this kind of confidence. Now that this confidence appeared again, Qin Fengzi felt that there must be some clues that he hadn't noticed in what was about to happen, and this clue would point to Li Yunxin's trump card to win. Not for any other reason but for his own curiosity, Qin Fengzi decided to find it slowly. This Li Yunxin's methods were really too fascinating. At least to a necromancer like him who was obsessed with formations. This time, the banquet with seawater and pebbles quickly ended. The 2 ghost emperors finally reached an agreement and decided to stay on the ocean for the time being. Emperor Li was a person who did things swiftly and decisively. Once he accepted the reality, he ran out with Emperor Yi and led the hundreds of thousands of ghostly soldiers to the south. Li Yunxin said that there were many big and small demon kings on the ocean. It seemed that the 2 ghost emperors went to patrol their territory. Li Yunxin said something to Red Lady. He didn't let Qin Fengzi listen. Then the female demon also left the stone mountain and went somewhere unknown. He told Qin Fengzi, "Do whatever you want, just like at home." Then he went upstairs alone. Previously, he and Red Lady opened up a few rooms on the upper floor as the second floor and installed doors and windows. His actions made Qin Fengzi even more confused, and he didn't dare to act rashly. So the stone mountain quieted down again. The room that Li Yunxin stayed in was small and cozy. It was afternoon. He looked out of the window and saw the ghost army led by Emperor Li and Emperor Yi disappearing at the intersection of the ocean and the sky. Then the ghostly aura gradually dissipated. The sunlight in the sky became soft and warm again and shone in through the window. He stood in front of the window for a while, bathing in the sunlight. Then he pulled a stool and sat by the window. Although there were still strong enemies, it was the most peaceful days he had ever had in the past year. At least the people hiding in the dark all showed up. He also had great power. He would no longer be in a precarious situation like before, worrying about the possibility of an arrow suddenly shooting from the dark. He enjoyed the rare quiet time like this and took out a transparent jade slip from his sleeve. The jade slip of enlightenment. Many things happened in the past year because of it. Li Yunxin poured demonic power into it and opened it. He was sure that this thing was a creation of modern technology. He had been sure of this since the first time he saw it. But this modern should belong to Qin Zhao, the elders on Yunshan and Xiaxing. But it must have been modified. For example, he had to open it with demonic power. In the past, he thought that Art Saint Qin Zhao did this to deceive people. But after hearing what Xiaxing said in the scroll, he realized that Qin Zhao modified it. Maybe it was because of this that this thing could work normally. Just like Xiaxing said, some rules of this world were different from his and Xiaxing's world. Qin Zhao used the rules of this world to modify it so he could continue using this thing. But did it mean that she had mastered some deep rules of this world? Or perhaps someone else was in control of those things? For example, the celestial Shenmu who created the painting technique for the art saint. He thought for a while and put these thoughts aside. Just like in his previous world, he held the jade slip in one hand and drew on it with the other. Up until now, he hadn't completely understood how to use this thing, not in terms of metaphysics. It was like asking someone who had just used a mobile phone to play with a smartphone in his previous world. It was too far ahead and there were too many changes. His conjectures gave him some idea, and he had a general idea of the steps he had to follow in order to succeed. But there were some functions that he hadn't understood yet. Some of the information that he could access now was sealed. When he first got the jade slip, his demonic power could only unlock a small part of it. Later, as his realm increased, he saw more and more things. But it didn't matter. Most of it was cultivation comprehension of painting. Although he was still in the profound realm, his muscles and bones had been tempered and were related to the great saint's life. His demonic power was no longer comparable to ordinary Shi mysteries. So he decided to try again. He had a feeling that he might make a new breakthrough this time. The translucent jade slip was the size of a palm. Now it glowed faintly and was empty. Li Yunxin reached out and drew a triangle. 2 light yellow squares jumped out. He tapped on one of the squares. The surface immediately turned light black. But if he used his power to look closely, he would find that the light black was formed by countless small words. The handwriting was so small and dense that it looked more like a grid of pixels. These things were related to the essence of the painting Tao, as well as some other cultivation techniques. It looked serious, and it was indeed the appearance of a mysterious gate jade slip. Li Yunxin had seen all of them. As he became more proficient in painting and comprehended many basic cultivation techniques, he understood more and more about the easy-to-prove and easy-to-obtain that Qinhua had left in the jade slip. Now, when he looked back at the problems that had puzzled him, he felt that they were as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The profound realm was part of the Tao of painting incantation recorded in the jade slip. But Li Yunxin wanted to know what to do next. Back then, Li Chunfeng had unintentionally mentioned that when one cultivated painting to an extremely high level, they could draw heaven and earth. Now, Li Yunxin had indeed drawn the sea weather mechanism of the 9 seas into the scroll. It could be considered as drawing heaven and earth. But he had used a trick. He had borrowed power. The qi in the world was originally chaotic. He had guided the qi into formations and placed them in various caves. Li Yunxin found those caves, identified the spiritual power flowing in them, and then copied them onto the scroll. Was like Chen Zhao was a calligrapher who had created his own calligraphy. But what he was doing now was just copying. There should be an even more profound realm. Drawing something in the world onto the scroll, and then changing the thing on the scroll would change the thing in reality. For example, he could draw Lord Boundless on the scroll. Then he could add a mustache to Lord Boundless in the painting. The real Lord Boundless would also have a mustache. In the past, this level was out of Li Yunxin's reach. But now he felt that he could give it a try. He didn't think that this was a delusion. There was an example on Cloud Mountain. He had changed the qi in the so-called Heaven and Earth Mother Plate, and the qi in the real world had changed as well. This was shockingly similar to the theory of painting. He even suspected that the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate was also made by Qin Zhao. With this hope, he slowly injected demonic power into the jade scroll. It was like a mortal slowly exerting force and increasing his strength bit by bit. The surface of the jade scroll quickly changed. Many light yellow squares popped out of the black words like mushrooms after a rain, covering the entire screen. All the squares were the same. There were no labels. In the past, Qin Zhao must have used some method to distinguish them. But in Li Yunxin's eyes, they were all the same. They were like many small things washed up on the beach by the waves. This would also happen when he didn't have enough demonic power. But once he stopped exerting force, they would all disappear, leaving only the things that the realm should see. It was like a wave sending a shell to the beach. Whether or not the shell was what Li Yunxin liked depended on luck, or rather, his original intention. He continued to inject demonic power until it reached the limit that Li Yunxin could bear. He stopped. The squares that filled the screen immediately retreated like the tide. In the blink of an eye there were only 2 left. His premonition had come true. There would be a breakthrough today. As for what he would get, Li Yunxin opened the first one. Then he frowned in disappointment. The content of this one was actually a method to train qi to increase demonic power. This kind of method was useless to him now. So he opened the second one. He frowned too. It still wasn't a painting technique that could advance further. It was just some mindless words. It didn't even have anything to do with cultivation. He casually swiped and looked at it for a while in disappointment, then, he made a soft, ha. Chapter 7:15. At first, the words that he saw were indeed, without rhyme or reason. They were all bits and pieces such as, there will always be a reward for your efforts. The world is a giant cage. Everyone has the right to escape, and even ants have their own happiness. In his world, this was called chicken soup. If he used it too much, it would be called poisonous chicken soup. Every sentence took up the entire screen. He had to click on it to see the next sentence. Li Yunxin only read a few sentences before realizing that this might be something like a signature. It should be a folder that stored some greetings, or something like that. Why is Qin Zhao doing this too? There were many similar sentences. Li Yunxin used the skip function that he'd learned before to read further. That was why he was interested. Because he saw another sentence at the back. They're really shameful. The style of this sentence was completely different from the previous ones. When he saw this sentence, he immediately stopped. He realized that there might be something hidden in this folder that would surprise him. So, he suppressed the urge to continue reading and went back to the beginning. His research on the art saint's past might point to some huge secret hidden in this world. He could not let go of any clues, nor could he overlook a single detail. When it came to this document, it meant that perhaps every sentence had its own unique meaning. He first put the jade slip on the windowsill. Then he waved it in the air and a cup of steaming tea landed on the windowsill. He picked up the cup, took a sip and exhaled softly. He used his divine sense to sense the surroundings of the mountain. After confirming that everything was fine, he picked up the jade slip again. He flipped through it page by page with great patience. It took him 2 hours to read from the first to the 646th. When the sunlight from outside the window moved to his face and turned orange, he put the jade slip down again. The tea that he'd only taken a sip was already cold. The first thing he confirmed was that the 646 lines didn't mean 646 days. It might be longer. Rather than calling it a signature, it was more like a diary that recorded his thoughts and feelings. The first few dozen comments were simply to express his emotions. His words revealed some bewilderment and sadness. It was as if the person who wrote these words was at a loss for what to do. Li Yunxin analyzed as he read. He believed that Qin Zhao had probably written these down when he first came to this world. He wasn't used to the new environment. But the next 2 sentences made him overturn his guess and realize that he was ridiculously wrong. They were numbered 225 and 226 respectively. No one will do more for him than I do. Why does everyone let themselves be immersed in fear? Time can comfort and heal everything. I know them better these days. What else could one do in deep space but fear and awe? But fortunately, fear also means hope. Li Yunxin suppressed the urge to guess who he was. These days meant that there was a period of time between the 2 sentences and that they were not written 2 days apart. The previous sentences should have the same situation. Combined with the lingering melancholy and pessimism in these words, it was unlikely that someone in such an emotional state would write down their feelings frequently in a day. This meant that the 646 lines that he had read so far might have been written over a period of 3 years or more. Once he immersed himself in these words, his initial doubt that this wasn't Qin Zhao's style disappeared. People would change significantly in a few years. Many people would look back at what they had said and done 5 years ago and think, how is this possible? In deep space. These 4 words overturned Li Yunxin's guess. From Xie Xing's words, he realized that the language habits of his world were very similar to his own. Then there shouldn't be any other explanation for deep space. It should be referring to the universe or space. This coincided with what Xie Xing said about them being able to travel through space. They had the ability to travel through space. Qin Zhao also said, in deep space. It seemed to be hinting that the people around them were afraid, so they did not get along very well. Hence, they had a dispute over a certain matter. Li Yunxin thought that when Qin Zhao wrote these things, it was very likely that she was on a long journey. It was so long that many people were afraid and felt that the future was uncertain. She probably wasn't in this world when she wrote these things. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. He felt that his guess was correct, but there was one thing he couldn't explain. The many traces Qin Zhao had left showed that she was familiar with some things in his world. How did she know? Perhaps there would be an answer in the future. The following words were still filled with negative emotions. But this negativity also changed subtly. Li Yunxin memorized every sentence in his head and then jumped out from the words and skimmed through them as a whole. Then he realized that the feeling of loss at the beginning was fading. He became calm. It was as if he had gotten used to deep space travel or something else. This state continued until the 645th sentence. We are all in the current. Go with the flow or be drowned. There was nothing special about this sentence, compared to the previous ones. But in the next sentence, the 646th sentence, a change occurred. I can do it. This was one of the few sentences in the record that had strong emotions. The previous 645th sentence formed an image or a state, a girl playing with her phone, sitting on a chair, sighing softly and recording her thoughts. Occasionally she would be excited, but she would soon be drowned by sadness. But she still had hope for some people and things. However, due to the depression of the people around her, she could only bury that little bit of hope. She would only use it to warm herself when she was the most helpless. But when she reached this sentence, the scene seemed to change. The girl stood up. Her eyes were bright and spirited. She said firmly, I can do it. The 2 states were too different. Li Yunxin was sure that a long time had passed between the 2 sentences. During this time he didn't have the time or the chance to record his thoughts. He only wrote this sentence after he made a decision. What he saw next confirmed his conjecture. He put down the jade slip and looked at the sunset on the ocean outside the window to clear his mind. Then he picked it up again and spent 4 hours reading the next 125 sentences. He read until the moon hung high in the sky. The sentence that had piqued his interest and made him exclaim in surprise was the 98th sentence out of the 125 sentences. The sentence before this sentence revealed a completely different emotion from the previous 646th sentence. If Li Yunxin hadn't carefully read the previous records and simulated the development of the matter in her mind, she would have thought that it was written by two completely different people. The style of writing was also completely different. The previous 600 or so sentences were mostly to express empty and general emotions. It was as if the recorder's life was boring and there weren't any details that could attract her attention. But these 120 sentences became more detailed. It was also this that made Li Yunxin feel like he was a diary. Most of the words were meaningful and pointed to a specific person or thing. This should mean that when these words were recorded, the recorder's life had undergone an earth-shattering change. The emotions in her heart surged, and her life was indeed filled with many things that made her feel refreshed. Li Yunxin was sure that these were things that Qin Zhao had recorded after coming to this world. For example, "It feels so good to have my feet on the ground," it confirmed Li Yunxin's guess. They had indeed been traveling in deep space before. "We've lost too much." Did this mean that they'd lost the earth and sky? Or did it mean something else? "I can save them." Qin Zhao was in high spirits, no longer as lost and worried as before. This also meant that she hadn't come to this world by accident. She had a goal and a mission, to save. But, did them refer to everyone in this world or the so-called elders on Cloud Mountain? Li Yunxin thought of the sentence, "They're so shameful." They should refer to the elders of Cloud Mountain. At least at first. "I feel like a god." This sentence was recorded after the other dozen sentences. Li Yunxin thought that Qin Zhao had recorded the first dozen sentences when she'd just come into contact with the supernatural abilities of this world. It expressed joy, emotion, and curiosity. When she reached this sentence, it should mean that she had learned something. Both her emotions and tone were starting to resemble the art saint that Qin Zhao was familiar with. Then a key point appeared in the 74th sentence. Rather than a sentence, it was more like a paragraph. "Shenmu is completely different from the person in history. I thought he should be tall, majestic, and shining. In the end he spoke like a madman. But he's clearly more human than the one in history. So there's something between the two of them." The main idea of this paragraph was to express the surprise that the recorder felt after seeing the person in history. It's not the same at all. This was very normal. Even a person might not understand themselves, let alone a bystander. Shenmu should be the Shenmu who'd created the art path. When this paragraph was recorded, it should be 2,200 years ago when Qin Zhao met Shenmu. From these words, Shenmu should be an important person, someone who'd be recorded in history. And Shenmu was a celestial. This meant that the celestials living in the astral plane and the gods in the eyes of the common people were people from Qin Zhao's world. At least in the past. But for some reason the celestials stayed in this world. And Qin Zhao's original mission was to save them. Chapter 7:16. There was such a thing between the two of them should be referring to Shenmu and another person. That person should also be in the history of his previous world. Or maybe it was just someone from the same era who wasn't important to the current situation. At this point, Li Yunxin paused and exhaled softly. He drew another line in the void of space and drew another cup of tea. He took a sip and felt the heat in his mouth and the cold outside the window. He looked up at the starry sky. The galaxy above the ocean was brilliant. The stars gathered in one place, outlining the brilliant Milky Way. This was a beautiful scene that was extremely rare in his previous world. Was the astral plane, where the celestials lived in this starry sky, or was it another space? In the past, Li Yunxin had thought about celestials and astral plane. But back then he didn't even know what celestials were. There was no point in thinking too much. But now he realized that the so-called celestials were also pitiful creatures waiting to be saved. This waiting might have lasted for tens of thousands of years. During this time they were also saving themselves. They created the celestial gate. They introduced the rules of this world and made mortals cultivate the bodies of the Grand Supreme for them to use. But this was obviously very slow. They still needed help from people in his previous world. Li Yunxin wanted to know what had caused the current situation, but he didn't have any clues at the moment. However, Shenmu's existence might be able to provide some clues. The techniques passed down by Daotong and Kenzo were most likely created by Shenmu when he was a celestial. And Shenmu had once possessed Yu Meng. According to Yu Meng, Shenmu told him that he had a disagreement with the celestials in the astral plane. That was why he came down in an unconventional way, which led to the strange things that happened to Yu Meng. Perhaps this statement could be verified. He had tailor-made a painting technique for Qin Zhao. And the painting technique was immediately destroyed by the celestial gate. This should be the will of the celestials. In other words, the celestials had a falling out with their savior, Qin Zhao. Li Yunxin's deduction was confirmed in the next few dozen sentences. From the words, it seemed that a long time had passed between these sentences. It was extremely likely that it would take decades or even centuries. During this period of time, it was also time for Qining to enter the Sage Realm, enter the Cloud Mountain, and establish the painting Dao. There weren't many words, but each of them showed that her thoughts and position had changed drastically. At first, she shouldered the responsibility of rescuing the Devas. But gradually, she seemed to have developed a favorable impression of the current world. As a result, he developed a sense of disgust towards the heavenly man's method of nurturing people for his own use. That is why he said, "Shame on them." The other sentences also caught Li Yunxin's attention, but he couldn't make a definite inference at the moment. The legend is actually true. Can I do it? I should live for myself. These few sentences undoubtedly contained a huge amount of information. Li Yunxin even believed that they were the key to solving all the mysteries. A certain legend that had been proven to be true had a huge impact on Qin Zhao's worldview, outlook on life and values. It made her completely release her inner self. Perhaps this could explain the Qin Zhao that Li Yunxin saw later, leaving all sorts of traces in the world and becoming interesting. This should be the result of living for herself, as she said. The last sentence in the document was, "Die with no regrets." At this point, Li Yunxin had already read all 774 sentences. He could feel the changes in Qin Zhao. From an ordinary girl who was slightly lost and terrified about life to the art saint who had left behind many incredible relics in the world. There probably wouldn't be any contact more intimate than this. He was facing the softest and most private part of her heart. In the past, the art saint was just a symbol, a piece of history. But through these 774 sentences, she was restored to a living person in Li Yunxin's heart. But it was also at this moment that he felt something in his heart was removed. Removed wasn't an appropriate description. It was more like there had been something in the beginning. As he understood Qin Zhao, this thing slowly melted and flowed. In the end, it vaporized and flowed into his body. He could still feel their existence, but it was difficult to touch them again. He spaced out for a while. The moon was bright in the sky and the stars were brilliant. But he slowly experienced a sense of helplessness. This helplessness gradually condensed in his chest and blocked it. Thus he sighed softly and let it out. Qin Zhao. Li Yunxin tapped his finger lightly on the windowsill. After a few breaths, he sighed again. She's just a person. The urgent desire and expectation in his heart dissipated with these 2 breaths. He didn't know whether to be happy or worried. After a quarter of an hour, he slowly put away the jade slip and stood up. 6 hours ago he was bathing in the sun. Now he was bathing in the moonlight. The last 4 words were, "Die with no regrets." But did this mean that Qin Zhao was prepared to die, or was he prepared to throw himself into something and die with no regrets? If it was the latter, it might mean that the art saint wasn't dead yet. The last dozens of sentences showed that Qin Zhao was going to part ways with the celestial sect. She was the art saint at that time and had unimaginable powers. How could someone like her not have a way out? Even if she died, it couldn't be an ending like, the art saint went crazy and was killed by the 2 saints. If she didn't die, where would she be now? Li Yunxin walked to the window and pondered. Taoish Qingshui and the owner of Southwood Lodge couldn't be the art saint. Their styles were completely different. They couldn't be the same person. And the land and sea of this world had been turned upside down. If Qin Zhao had been hiding in a corner, she wouldn't have ignored the impassioned last 4 words. She could scold them for being shameful for feeding people, but she wouldn't have watched the hundreds of millions of people on the land suffer. She wasn't in this world and she wouldn't be in the astral world either. It didn't seem like a good place to go. Then, was she in the netherworld? Xia Xing wanted to go to Dragon Island to find Shinryu because of a few words from him. It seemed to mean that Shinryu was connected to the art saint. Now Li Yunxin knew that Shinryu was drawn by the art saint. As for why, he guessed it was to take over. Otherwise, why would the totem and sacred ancestor in his world be the dragon mother in this world? It was very likely that she made it for him. But later, for some reason, she didn't take away Shinryu's emptiness, and only took some of its power? So, back then the White Hell King had imparted the possession art to him. He said that dragons were emptiness. At that time he guessed that this method wasn't by Yanjun's own idea, but someone else's. This, someone else, was most likely Qin Zhao. Bai Yanjun knew the method of taking over, he was in the netherworld. Xie Xing insisted on going to Dragon Island to find Shinryu. Shinryu guarded the entrance to the netherworld. It seemed that all the clues pointed to that world. Art Saint Qin Zhao faked his death 1,000 years ago and snuck into the netherworld. In the nether realm, there seemed to be an incident, a legend. Qin Zhao was inspired by this legend and was ready to sacrifice his life. Damn. If he had known this earlier, he could have tried to ask Bai Yanjun. He would have been able to get some information out of him and figure out some things. As for now, he wanted to get Dragon Island. Before this, he had been pushed, as Li Chunfeng put it. Even 15 minutes ago, the only thing that drove him forward was to figure out the truth. But now he finally had a real and clear goal, to take Dragon Island and the entrance to the netherworld. Although he had experienced many things, he always participated in them as an unimportant person. He borrowed the power of others or was borrowed by others. But now, an opportunity was presented to him. To control the entrance to the netherworld, he would become a player in the game. He could sit on the table and talk instead of being placed on it. But what was the thing that Qin Zhao went to the netherworld for? Li Yunxin admired the emotion she had when she recorded the words, "Die with no regrets." But he didn't know if he could do it. He stood in front of the window for a while. But he didn't look relieved after solving the mystery. Because in his heart, there was a faint premonition. He always felt that he seemed to have missed something. To him, hunches often meant that his subjective consciousness had ignored some clues that might have been recorded by his subconscious. But he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. Just then he saw a flash of light at the border of the sea and sky. It looked like an inconspicuous light. Then the light flashed a few more times. About a dozen breaths later there was a deep sound like thunder. That should be Emperor Li's doing. Perhaps they had encountered some unruly great demon, and thus started to fight. Li Yunxin shook his head. Then he froze. That light was like a lamp, illuminating a thought that existed in his subconscious. Jade Scroll. Jade Scroll of Enlightenment. He had been focusing on the contents of the scroll from beginning to end, but neglected the thing itself. This thing. Art Saint had been carrying it with him ever since he was in the other world. However, she had also brought this thing to this world. And how did he come here? Soul transmigration. He only brought his own soul from the other world. Because of that, when he needed a medium to guide the willpower of his world into this world, the medium he used was himself. But what about Shinryu? The core of Shinryu, according to his previous speculation, was the dragon scale. If the dragon scale could be used as a medium to guide the wishes of Qin Zhao's world here, did it mean that the dragon scale was also brought from her world? In her world, dragons really existed. She could bring things from there, the dragon scale and the jade scroll. Did it mean that this world and Qin Zhao's world were not originally unrelated like Li Yunxin's world? Or was it simply the same world? But what about Xie Xing? Why did he come here as a soul? Qin Zhao left the jade scroll and didn't destroy it? Did he have other intentions? Chapter 717. Li Yunxin had a troubled night. He seemed to have gotten used to being busy. Even now, when the war was taking a break, he couldn't stop his mind from thinking. He went to check his scroll, but Xie Xing's mind still hadn't fully recovered. He regretted being too hasty a few days ago and driving this person crazy. If he had asked after reading Qin Zhao's memories in the translucent jade scroll, he might have been able to get more details easily. He spent the next 3 days in the stone room and didn't take a step out. He checked the words Qin Zhao left behind repeatedly, trying to get deeper information. Unfortunately, it didn't work. But Qin Fengzi seemed to be in a hurry. Li Yunxin used his supernatural power and knew who he had contacted several times. Maybe it was his fellow sect members on Sanxian Mountain, or maybe it was the 10,000-year-old ancestor. After communicating, this former leader of the vast army tried to persuade him to cooperate with the lifeless immortal gate. But Li Yunxin only said that he had to wait for news of Qin Jun entering the Dragon Island. Just like that, another 10 days passed leisurely. He drank tea, drank wine, and tasted the strange delicacies. He practiced the painting Dao technique in the translucent jade scroll and studied the other functions of the scroll. Although it didn't work, he realized that this thing wasn't just 4 records. There seemed to be other functions and information. He couldn't see them, but he knew they existed. When he injected his demon power, the documents poured out like a storm, leaving only 1 or 2 at a time. What he had come into contact with was just a drop in the ocean. It was as if the scroll was originally a piece of paper filled with pictures, and the information he had come into contact with was just written on the corner of the paper. What were the rest? In these 13 days, thunder rumbled from time to time from near to far. This should be the army of ghosts led by Emperor Li and Emperor Yi. They pushed their way through and tamed all the wild demons. Emperor Li was in a good mood, but he seemed to miss Qin Jun. Although he didn't know why he missed Li Yunxin. He would come back every 2 days to ask Li Yunxin about his progress and proudly talk about the results. In his words, even the ocean demon kings could not withstand a single blow. There were a few tough ones, but it only took him 6 to 8 hours to deal with them. On the other hand, when he came back the day before yesterday, he cursed out loud, saying that he had encountered a troublesome character. Li Yunxin was bored and joked about whether he should do it himself. Emperor Li said that it was a piece of cake and it wouldn't take long. However, he hadn't shown up until tonight. Presumably he hadn't made any progress. Otherwise he would have come back long ago to show off. In fact, Li Yunxin knew which bone Emperor Li had bitten. His picture scroll included the 9 seas, and no major changes in energy activity in the seas could escape his control. Emperor Li and Emperor Yi were blocked near the vast formation. It was the formation of the lifeless immortal sect. Li Yunxin had never personally gone to investigate. That formation had been in operation for tens of thousands of years. Although he was confident, he was not conceited. He knew that it would be difficult to deal with him. If he went there personally, he might fall into a trap and cause trouble. He heard from Qin Fengzi that the formation was about to be completed. It was best for Emperor Li to go on his behalf. A peak of the mysterious realm with hundreds of thousands of ghost soldiers. Even if something happened, he could probably protect himself. The spiritual energy in the formation had become denser and denser. If they surrounded it, they might force out someone. For example, the person Li Yunxin was waiting for tonight. He might not come. But if he wanted to come, he would come in the next few days. If he didn't come the day before or yesterday, there was a high chance he would come today. So tonight, Li Yunxin only did one thing: wait. From the moon rising until it hung high in the sky. He sat by the window and looked at the ocean in the distance. After a long time, he could see the shape of the fog rising from the sea like the clouds in the sky. At this time, it should be the middle of winter on the land. The Qin kingdom had always had 4 distinct seasons. Right now it might be snowing heavily. It should have snowed 6 or 7 times before. He remembered that a dozen years ago the snow was very heavy. Each year it would be above his knees. The mountains and fields were a vast expanse of white. But thinking back to these years, he felt that it was colder in recent years. When he was young, he felt that the snow was heavy. Maybe it was because he was short. At that time it was above his knees. Now it was just below his ankles. Today, come to think of it, it should be the 26th of October. In another 30 days it would be New Year. New Year. When this word jumped out of Li Yunxin's head, he couldn't help but let out a soft ha. In his previous life, the taste of New Year was already very faint. Maybe only he had a faint taste of New Year. The old man would make some dumplings, wine, and make New Year's Eve dinner. Most of the time, the next day he would start eating leftovers again. When he was in a good mood, he would make a whip. But in his memory it was only once. When he was ready to light a fire on the street, he was taken away by the law enforcers and fined a sum of money. The old man was so angry that he beat him up. But at night he drank too much and cried while hugging him. He couldn't hear clearly what he was mumbling. At that time, Li Yunxin tried to understand his feelings. But how could he understand? Since he came to this world, he didn't seem to have a good New Year. Li Chunfeng and Shang Guanyu were both cultivators. They didn't care about those things. The festivals that cultivators celebrated were different from mortals. Most of them celebrated the birthday of this emperor or that emperor. If they were still in Daotong or Kenzhou, there would be more festivals to celebrate. In theory, every day could be considered a festival. There were hundreds of saints in the history of Shenmen. The day each of them was born was Christmas, and the day each of them ascended was Immortal Day. In addition, there were the birthdays of many elders and masters in the sect. If they celebrated like mortals, they might have to eat dozens of dumplings every day. Therefore, even if cultivators didn't celebrate, they celebrated every day. When they first entered the sect, there was a daily task called fasting. It was to wake up early, wash your face, sit cross-legged, and recite the names of many ancestors and masters to calm your mind. This was actually celebrating. But now he wanted to experience the taste of New Year. If things went well after 30 days, Hopefully when that day came he wouldn't be fighting someone to the death and he wouldn't be on the verge of death. That would really spoil the fun. Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. Sigh. Although it was warmer on the ocean than on land, the smell of breath had turned into fog. Mortals exhaled into fog because they had body heat. When demons and cultivators reached a very high realm, the only things they had in common with mortals were their human form and meridians. There was no need to breathe and there was no need for body heat. But they still needed to breathe because spiritual energy flowed through their meridians. The human body was a sophisticated system. When cultivators tempered their bodies, it was like modifying this system. But no matter how much they modified it, there would always be some redundant functions. Therefore, when spiritual energy flowed, there would naturally be breathing. But this was fundamentally different from breathing, which mortals relied on to survive. As for body heat, he didn't know what others would do. But Li Yunxin liked the feeling of his body being slightly warm. If he abandoned body heat and let his body be as cold as ordinary objects, there were many inconveniences. For example, if he touched something next to him, he wouldn't know whether it was cold or warm. His sense of touch would also be affected and he might have to divert his attention to take a look. In fact, looking at it this way, the various functions of the mortal body were actually almost perfect. Cultivators defy the heavens and change their fate. Apart from obtaining longevity and supernatural powers, it was hard to say how much they had lost. As he thought about it, he watched the breath he exhaled slowly dissipate. The fog gradually faded in the moonlight and danced along with the airflow. It was as if the air had become an invisible and untouchable wall, causing the fog to float straight up, a wall. Li Yunxin slowly straightened his body. I've been waiting for a long time for our honored guest, he said in a low voice. How long have you been here? So, a translucent figure slowly condensed in front of him. The breath he exhaled just now had hit this wall, after drifting away. The person was only 2 steps away from him. For mortals, this distance was appropriate. But for cultivators and demons, appearing at such a distance was almost equivalent to standing in front of someone's face. This was under the condition that Li Yunxin's thoughts were distracted and he didn't notice it. He was unhappy because of this, but he didn't show it. The person in front of him was translucent. His body flickered, obviously not a physical body. He didn't use the method of soul incarnation, but another supernatural power that Li Yunxin had never seen before. It was an old man with white hair and beard. His eyebrows hung down long and converged in his white beard. His head was round and big and his face was full of flesh and bones. He looked very much like a benevolent old man. He was wearing a long hemp robe. He first blinked at Li Yunxin, then took a step back and cupped his hands. I just arrived. I'm out of practice. I'm Rude Dragon King. Li Yunxin stared at him without batting an eyelid, then said in a deep voice, Your Excellency is the 10,000-year-old ancestor. Yes. The benevolent old man replied with a smile. He looked left and right and waved his hand. So he grabbed a small stool by the wall and sat down. He twisted his body to make himself more comfortable. Then, like a real old man, he let out a long breath comfortably. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. 10,000-year-old ancestor made him feel strange. He couldn't say what was strange, but every action and every word made him feel strange. However, this strange didn't feel dangerous. Many times, his intuition would discover the danger of things one step ahead of him, and would also give him hints. But now there was no such hint. He just felt that the 10,000-year-old ancestor shouldn't be like this. What did out of practice mean? Looking at his current speech and behavior, it seemed that he wanted to be humble and friendly. But if he wanted to do so, he shouldn't have directly appeared in the room 2 steps away when he wasn't paying attention. That wasn't friendly behavior, and could even be considered a provocation. Chapter 7:18. Emperor Li went to cause trouble for the vast sea formation. Li Yunxin thought that if the 10,000-year ancestor really didn't want to start a war with him, he should have realized that this matter couldn't be resolved through Qin Fengzi's words. He would have used some method to talk to him personally. He was also prepared for the other to be angry, but the situation before him was so strange. He coughed lightly and said, Then the ancestor is here for the vast sea formation? The old man smiled and sighed. Sigh. The Dragon King sent an army to attack that formation. It wasn't me, Li Yunxin said. The old man waved his hand as if to say, It's the same thing anyway, isn't it just to force me out? Sigh. It's not that I don't want to meet the Dragon King, It's just that it's inconvenient before. Li Yunxin frowned again. He realized that the 10,000-year ancestor in front of him, if it was real, might be difficult to deal with. What kind of person was easy to deal with? Someone like the 9th young master was easy to deal with. He didn't have any schemes and could do whatever he wanted. Yunzi, Su Yusong, and Zhuomuzhe were easy to deal with. Although their cultivation levels were worlds apart, they were essentially the same. They were very confident in their own abilities. They thought that everything in the world was under their control and that they were the smartest people in the world. For such people, as long as he had more information than them or even just a little bit more, their confidence would become their biggest weakness. Because of their cultivation methods, most Taoists were confident. This was their innate flaw. In recent times, Lord Donghai and Lord Haohan were easy to deal with. They weren't overconfident like Taoists. They knew how to judge the situation, and they knew how to grasp people's hearts. They would reveal their hostility and put themselves on a high pedestal. Thus they would be cautious and think carefully. Once they were smarter than them, these things wouldn't be a problem. But like the person in front of him, he was the lifeless immortal Gates ancestor. In this world he could be considered one of the top figures. But in front of him, he showed a modest face, and when he spoke, there was not a trace of anger. It was as if she was the master and he was the servant. This kind of person who couldn't be seen through and could put on a low profile was the most difficult to deal with. Thus, Li Yunxin became even more cautious. I do have the intention to meet you. He did not ask himself to be as modest as the other, nor to show his hostility. I can only hope that this will force you out. Because I feel that whether we become enemies or friends, it seems to only be a matter of a single thought. The old man listened attentively and leaned forward a little. She looked at him sincerely and put on a sincere expression. Dragon King, you still don't trust me? Do you think that we, like those celestial sect of wonders in Munenju, have our own intentions and use the Dragon King? Li Yunxin smiled. Who doesn't have their own intentions? So yes, it doesn't feel good to be a chess piece. Then? The old man rubbed his hands. What if we are Dragon King's pawns? Li Yunxin blinked. Dragon King is not the same as before, the old man said with a smile. Now, who in the world dares to say that they can pinch Dragon King in their hands? They are either allies or enemies. Those who don't want to cause trouble for themselves will not blindly make enemies. On this point, aren't the two of us the same? Dragon King doesn't want to start a war with us carelessly. If we weren't forced to, what reason would we have to provoke Dragon King? This old man just wants to go back to land. This array in the vast sea is just for this one thing. Return to land and rebuild the orthodox celestial sect of wonders. What Dragon King wants to do in the sea has nothing to do with us. Not only does it have nothing to do with us, we can also help Dragon King on land. Li Yunxin raised his hand. Ancestor, you are a straightforward person. However, this attitude was a little too humble. It doesn't match your identity. I have doubts when I hear it. And, just to rebuild the orthodox Shenmen. Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice and thought about the celestial beings. One day when you know what the so-called orthodox Shenmen is, your mind may change and you will also want to participate in my affairs. The old man laughed. Dragon King wants to say that celestial beings are not gods. They are also human beings. This old man might have known about it earlier than you, Dragon King. Li Yunxin was stunned. Then he frowned and looked at him. What did you say? Dragon King should also know. Otherwise, why is he so determined to get the Dragon Island? The Dragon Island is related to celestial beings, right? The old man winked at Li Yunxin like an old urchin. In these days we have controlled the Dragon Island, but we have not done anything. Dragon King should also know that what I said is true. We really have no interest in what Dragon King wants to do. Otherwise, why not seize the Dragon Island? Countless thoughts flashed through Li Yunxin's mind. The 10,000-year-old ancestor was said to have a lifespan of 40,000 years, and now he said such shocking words. What do you know? Li Yunxin blurted out. Celestial beings are not gods, they are humans. The old man said with a smile. His expression seemed to have seen through the vicissitudes of the world, and now he had also seen through it. It is true that they passed down the law of the will of heaven. But, they are just a little stronger. Dragon King said that if I know what the orthodox Shenmen is, my mind will change. There was nothing wrong with what he said. When I first guessed this, I did have other thoughts. But after 40,000 years, I slowly understood. The old man stroked his beard. Celestial beings are humans, they are gods, it doesn't matter. At that time they passed down the law to shepherd the people. Whether this is true or not, it doesn't matter. Ah. Since there are demons causing trouble in this world and since the common people live hard lives, there should always be someone in charge of the rules and give them a piece of paradise. In the past the Xianmen did not do well. I want to do this properly. It is only related to the common people of the world, it has nothing to do with whether the celestial beings are real or not. That is why I said it has nothing to do with what Dragon King wants to do. That is why I said that perhaps we are Dragon King's pawns. Ah, what you want to do concerns the secret of the heavenly path, the rise and fall. But this old man just want to do something for the world. You are the emperors, generals and ministers who perform on stage. We only want to be the people below. Li Yunxin's brows furrowed tightly. He could understand what this 10,000-year-old ancestor meant. When he was still in the Qing kingdom he was a pawn in the game. And the people who controlled him, the Xinryu Munanju and the Xianmen, were all fighting because of the power of the world. At that time in his eyes, it was indeed like what this old man said, emperors, generals and ministers performing on stage. At that time those things were not something he could participate in. He could only watch and had no intention of participating. After experiencing many hardships and twists and turns, he was now standing on the stage. But it was also now that the power struggles between the Xianmen, the dragons and the demons, things that were once unattainable in his eyes, had become small things that he could look down on. Now his goal was even bigger, the truth and secret of this world. The meaning of this 10,000-year-old ancestor's words was that he was thinking about the small things that Li Yunxin was looking down on. Perhaps he knew something about what Li Yunxin wanted to do, but he was not interested. But how did he know? He seemed to have seen through Li Yunxin's thoughts. This 10,000-year-old ancestor laughed again. I was originally just a cultivator. The cultivators in this world were born and raised by their parents. I can't compare to Dragon King. People like you are born with magic and are destined to do great things. As long as I do something for the people under the clouds, I will be able to live up to my original intention of cultivation. What do you know? Li Yunxin realized that tonight, this 10,000-year-old ancestor in front of him might be another way to get information. He stared at him. Have you really lived for 40,000 years? 40,000 years is a long time. I can't remember how many years it has been. The old man leaned forward as he spoke. I heard that Dragon King obtained a lot of treasures in Cloud Mountain. Don't you have a picture album of Shuaman's patriarchs and patriarchs? Look at me, don't I look familiar? Li Yunxin widened his eyes and stared at him. Of course, he had the picture album of the patriarchs and patriarchs. He had seen it not long ago. Xie Xing told him that the bodies of the saints of Xianmen were eventually taken by the celestial beings. At that time he had looked through the saint who was possessed by Gong Di. Therefore he had seen the faces of all the saints. His memory was amazing. He had an impression of almost all of them. Although there was no way to draw them out of thin air, if this 10,000-year-old ancestor meant that he was also in the portrait, he should be able to remember him as soon as he saw him. But after looking at it for a while he still had no impression. So he shook his head. You are not in the portrait album of the saints of Xianmen. The old man was stunned when he heard this. Then he sighed. Alas, so that's what happened. They only recorded the saints. He sighed and shook his head repeatedly. What a pity, what a pity. At that time, there were no saints. The mysterious realm was already amazing. I was thinking that I could also show my face in the album. After he said this, Li Yunxin realized that this 10,000-year-old ancestor's claim to have lived for more than 40,000 years was very likely to be true. When he first entered Cloud Mountain, Su Yusong pretended to be courteous with him. At that time he had told him a secret of the past, the origins of the Black and White Yama Lords. It mentioned that more than 40,000 years ago, the cultivation method passed down by the celestial beings had not been completed. There was no Grand Supreme in the Xianmen, and the highest cultivation level was only the mysterious realm. Among them, there were two mysterious realm cultivators who received the cultivation method from the celestial beings in their dreams. They cultivated according to the cultivation method, but they were possessed by the devil. They were besieged by the Xianmen and died. After their death they turned to the ghost path. In order to obtain a large number of souls, they stirred up turmoil in the world. Then the two ghost cultivators disappeared. After that, Black Bai Yanjun appeared in the world. If what this 10,000-year-old ancestor said was true, he should know. At that time, there was no Black Bai Yanjun. The old man sighed with emotion. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.